I was so glad that you. Good public hearing.
And go through security.
So I just can't.
We're gonna call it to order.
Ready? Okay, everybody. We're gonna get started with our workshop. Good evening. So tonight, and thanks everybody for, kind of switching on the fly there in terms of start time. So tonight we're going to talk about the noise study that was conducted and recent case law in Colorado.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. First part of tonight's meeting, we'll go over the results of the noise study. So the study was provided in your packet. This is Stuart. He is the consultant that prepared the document as well as did the actual analysis in the field over the course of the last few months. So I'm just going to walk through for him, or I'll flip through for him his presentation and take it away, Stuart.
Okay, thanks for having me. Thanks for, yeah. It's kind of fun to walk around Lions. I've driven through for my whole life, you know, and never really stopped. So, the purpose was just to study the impact of these outdoor music venues. And you guys aren't alone. I've done this for lots of different communities, and everybody's having the same issue. Not that it's good or bad. It's just there's this issue with the next.
Yeah.
We looked at 6 different spots. During the time after we got started, Planet Bluegrass had sort of ended for the festival season had ended. And the format we tried, the Valley Lynn, but there wasn't any significant noise coming from them. So I only have results from the other 4 spots up there. So the first one was, here's the state noise ordinance. And almost every ordinance is identical. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And they're all 55 dBA during the day for noise and 50 at night. So it's, if I have a property here and I'm making noise and this is residential, then I can only make 55 dBA during the day onto this other property. Okay. Lawnmowers don't count. Construction is like, there's lots of stuff in the state noise ordinance for construction, like limiting the time you can have construction. But you can't regulate construction just because people are hammering nails. I guess they don't hammer anymore. So the thing that they're going to talk about with this thing is saliva.
Yep.
Is it, there's a part in the state noise ordinance that says you can make any noise ordinance you want, but you can't be less restrictive. So you can't go and say, oh, we want it to be 65 at the residential property line instead of 55. So that's what that's this paragraph 25, 12, or 108. That's what that says in there. That means. So you can be more restrictive. Boulder tried that for a while. But you just can't be less restrictive. The caveats to that is what I've seen in other communities is if you have an event and you tell everybody you're going to have an event and it's once a year, it's like you get away. You sort of don't worry about it. And the noise complaints tend to be frequency generated. So I did some work up, where Chautauqua is. I guess Boulder's that way. And it's a really nice place. They have a nice little concert hall, but they were having inappropriate concerts. So if they're having chamber music and other stuff like that, it's fine. But they were having like rock and roll stuff, and there's all these people in these neighborhoods nearby that noise was bothering. So some of it is, what is the programming that you're putting out? And how often do you have it? It's where you get more annoyance or complaints. So Boulder County is very similar. Denver goes till 10 p.m. But Boulder has the same thing. So all the noise laws or ordinances are based on how you measure noise with the sound level. So sound level meter you download on here may or may not be valid. So there's some ANSI standards that tell you how to tell people how to build those things. And so you have to deal with how you measure the noise with something that's calibrated and built for ANSI standards. None of the ordinances really address audibility. So my standard little, so you can all sort of hear this. So, but if we were to measure the noise at your position from me talking, and you were to measure this doesn't even register on the meter, but you can clearly hear it because it's very different from the background noise. So you have your nice quiet here. I don't think he has a Harley Davidson, I'm sorry. They're too easy to pick up. Somebody comes down through town on Harley Davidson, everybody hears it because it's really different than the background sound. You know, most of the cars that come through town, you don't really hear. You have some tire noise and stuff, but so you hear the big trucks, but you don't really hear the cars. Okay. So there's a difference between compliance with the noise limits versus audibility. Okay, for the next slide. So we didn't get any, this is just a slide, we didn't get any measurable data from these guys, from these.
But the format doesn't mean that activities weren't happening. You just.
There was time, they were
Yeah.
activities, and I was like, I don't hear anything.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Okay.
Go to the next one.
Yeah.
So you guys, you had one of your summer concerts. Can I?
Oh,
No, that's fine, just say that. So can I like go over and point?
That or use her mouth.
No,
you can use my mouse too if you'd like.
it's like the advanced stuff. So you have, like, up here, you have some houses up on the hill.
Yeah.
Okay. Noise levels were like 50 dB, 47, something like that, depending on what was happening with the band. And it was a fairly quiet group of musicians that night. So it wasn't even remotely obnoxious. It was just clearly up on those houses up on the hill, very audible. You could clearly hear it. So as an example, you have this thing, then you have a straight line up to these other houses. So the noise just travels a straight line. And so you have this audibility. So this is the 55 dBA noise contour around the park for that concert. So it extends a little bit south into this residential area. I guess it's not really residential yet there.
This is a residential development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the.
Well,
Senior housing.
Yeah, so you have that sound because it's during the day, so that's what you can emit. That's what the standard for compliance would be. But it's not really extending up into the residential areas. You'll see that in the other two examples with Riverbend. These guys have a really nice layout here because they can, all the houses are north and east, and they're where they would have their outdoor stuff is sort of down in this little hollow next to the river, and it's shielded by that house. So go to the next one. So these dotted lines are all the 50 or 55 dBA concerts, noise contours. So again, the same thing with A Lodge. And by the time I got like a block north, a block and a half north, I was down into the background noise. So I could hear it, I could clearly hear the music, but I couldn't measure it. Because I have the background noise is here and the music is like here or here, it's right here. So I can't really discern in my measurements that place.
Can I ask a question real
Yes.
quick? Can you explain what a noise contour is?
So it's just like a topographic contour. Like if you look at a USGS map, they don't have those anymore, but you have like a 5,000 foot contour. It's the same thing. So I could make a 60 dBA contour. I could make a 41, or they would just
Okay.
get farther out.
So the contour, the dotted line is the spot at which it measured at 50 decibels,
Roughly, yeah.
roughly. Okay,
I mean, at times it's more, sometimes it's less, but generally that's about.
thank you.
50.
I appreciate it.
Can I ask a question to clarify as well? When you say a block and a half away, did you say to the north or was that all directions?
For A Lodge, by the time I got south, because you have the park there, and on the other side of the park, I could hear it a little bit, but it really, I really didn't hear it much down there. It was more north.
Right.
I could hear it. But again, by the time I got, whatever the next street is, above High Street.
Stickney.
Yeah, by the time I got up there, it was like, it was way less than 50. I could hear it.
Yeah, it was audible.
Yeah, this is the problem.
Uh-huh.
This is the problem. This is what I'm trying to get you guys to understand.
I hear
Okay.
you, I hear
So let's go to so the main stage is real simple. You know, now go back to and I don't wanna pick on A Lodge here, but they had their stage. It's pointing towards the south, because that's where the people sit. And so they would have some ability to put like a fence up or something that wouldn't cost a lot of money. They put something up to keep the noise going more south instead of going north. They're not out of compliance, because your school doesn't really count as a residential, or it's more commercial. So you really can't apply the noise ordinance to that. But again, we're into this, do you hear it?
Question, do you know what our noise ordinance says? Cause you keep talking like it's 55 decibels, it has no decibel.
Right, yours doesn't, I'm sorry.
Standard is 20 audible, 25 feet from the source of the sound, that's our ordinance.
Right, so that's,
So these things are not, none of these are in compliance.
right, so nothing. Yes, yeah, your ordinance is a little. I won't say anymore. Jefferson County has a noise ordinance that's a disaster. But in all these cases, it's this audibility thing that I think you have to address. Now, vehicle noise coming through your town is as loud or louder than any of these other events, and it happens all the time, day and night. And it's more event driven. You know, 2 a.m. when a motorcycle comes through town, or a truck, it's an event. It's not you hear the music for a while and the music turns off. It's like on and off type thing. And again, construction noise, if you're doing paving or anything, that's a lot louder than any of these events. So. Questions? I think what you have to wrestle with is, how do you deal with this? And it's you can deal with it by limiting the times. So I know we did some work with Douglas County years ago, and they've said, okay, you have some noise limits, but you have to turn things off at like 9 o'clock or something. So you can do things that late. Can you back up
Yep.
to just pick A Lodge or somebody, or? I'm not saying these guys are gonna do it, but in any of these venues that they have, they
That's
can
what
bring,
we do. Yeah.
they could bring in a band that's really, really loud. You know, and they could, Denver Botanic Gardens used to do that. They would have you been to Denver Botanic Gardens? It's really nice. I mean, they had the B-52s there once. It's like, come on. Do you have the right programming, the right type of musicians and acts, then you can minimize that. And I'm not saying these guys are gonna do that. They're not gonna bring the Rolling Stones or something in there to make it really loud. So it's what by the programming they have, they can minimize a lot of it. Yes.
Definitely regulate the types of music that are.
Yeah, that's, no, I don't
suggest.
I'm just telling you everything that I'm
Sure. Require everybody to have classical trios.
You know, if I look at Main Stage and Day Lodge, they have people sitting right there, so they're gonna have to have music that's, you know, reasonable, so that people can have a conversation and enjoy their hamburger or their beer or whatever. So they are sort of self-regulating themselves. If they were too loud, people are gonna go, I can't have a conversation. You know, I'm not 20 years old, I don't wanna go to the disco and have my eardrums blasted out. So I think I'm not trying to pick on them, but I think they're gonna self-regulate themselves.
Greg, you have something?
Yeah, on one of your slides, you talked about construction projects. Under the state of Colorado noise law, but there's no dB cited.
No, it's the, no, very specifically, because okay, you have a neighbor right next to you, and you're gonna use your Dale gun to build a shed in your backyard or do something. You know, you're gonna be 70, it could be 70, 80 dB, or your lawnmower, you know, things like this. Construction is just loud. You know, someone throws a 2x4 down on a piece of plywood, you know, and so they don't regulate construction, the levels with construction.
So, but it says here shall be subject to the maximum permissible noise levels
You know,
specified in industrial zones.
industrial is like 20 dB higher. So industrial daytime is 75, I think, in the state.
And maybe Attorney Dittman has more information.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're right, Trustee Lowell. The construction projects are subject to the maximum permissible noise levels for industrial zones. That's 80 dB during the day, and then after 7 to 7 a.m. is 75 dB.
Thank you.
Denver does it a little bit, but I've never really seen any other municipalities really try to regulate construction. It's just, it's hard.
Beyond hours.
Well, they will do it on the hours, so they'll say like, don't start before 9, and you gotta be done by 5 or 6 or 7 or something, but they'll regulate the hours, but they don't try to necessarily regulate the.
It would be hard to.
Yeah, well,
I mean, you can't muffle a jackhammer really.
right,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
Have you seen people try to distinguish between a jackhammer or some louder activity and some less loud activity in construction? Construction programming, so to speak?
No, I think then you get into OSHA stuff.
Okay.
So I haven't really seen them deal with construction. I don't think I've ever had a project where they were worried about construction directly. There were some other things going on. I know Denver does it. Denver does this.
I think the only, and I tried to search this a little bit when I was looking at the construction hours ordinance. I think the only example I can think of is probably more related to oil and gas with some of their drilling. They'll do the big noise buffers, but I think that's a scale that is not necessarily applicable here. Big sound walls, you probably have some.
Yeah. Okay. Attorney Dittman, did you want to talk about the Salida case?
Yeah, I can. If we're ready to speak about the Salida case, I can.
Yeah.
So we did a good job earlier of talking about the state Colorado Noise Abatement Act, and that statute sets levels for various kinds of sounds we've already kind of been through. For residential areas, you know, that's generally 55 dB, and then up to industrial areas and 80 dB just talked about. And so what the Salida case is really about is about to what extent municipalities can issue permits to differ from the limits set under the state law. So again, you know, that kind of chart from, you know, industrial, residential, and then times a day, usually you know, between 7 and 7, and then in you know, off hours after 7 till 7 a.m. And so Section 11 of the Colorado Noise Abatement Act speaks to local governments being able to be exempted from this from you know, this law, so they could have outdoor concerts and not be subject to these noise standards. In one portion of that Section 11 of the Colorado Noise Abatement Act speaks to licensees and lessees of government property as well, the permittees of the government essentially. And so the question in the Salida Act is, to what extent can the government, local government, issue permits to exceed state noise standards? And so the facts in the Salida case were more or less that there's a, you know, like Lyons, a very vibrant downtown music scene. There's a bar called the High Side Bar and Grill in downtown Salida. A gentleman, you know, lived across the river, across the street in an industrial area. And he was complaining about the noise being too loud and exceeding the state standards. And he had you know, measured it at over I think 85 dB at its peak, which would far exceed you know, even the industrial standards. And so what Salida had done is they had issued permits essentially to say that you're allowed on so many occasions to exceed those those noise permits. That the city administrator recommended 15. The city council decided to do 60 per location, so a very large number of noise permits. And Mr. Hobbs, sued the city over that. And the question was again, the question of statutory interpretation, to what extent the statute actually permitted local governments to permit for-profit entities to exceed the state noise standards. At the district court level and at the Court of Appeals level, the courts agreed that the statute said clearly in their opinion that anyone in the government licensed or permitted to, under a permitting scheme was allowed to exceed those limits. The Supreme Court reversed the decisions of the lower courts, and said that no, if that were the case, one, they found the language was ambiguous. It wasn't clear either way to what extent the statute permitted cities and towns from issuing permits. But two, and what the court found, primarily is that they thought if people were allowed to do this, if cities were allowed to issue these permits, then the statute would be meaningless, and that anyone could exceed the state noise limits so long as they get a permit from the local government. So they struck down, issued. Be clear, they basically disallowed what Salida was doing. It made clear that you cannot issue noise permits to for-profit entities that would exceed the state noise standards set under the Colorado Noise Abatement Act. So what does this mean is really the question I think that all of us have, that city attorneys and town attorneys have had across Colorado. And it means that, this has no applicability to the cultural and events that cities and towns put on themselves, to permits they issue to nonprofit entities, but you can't issue any sort of noise permit that would allow you to exceed the 60 or 55 dB in a residential area, or 60 in a commercial area, or 80 in an industrial area. You can't issue a permit to do that under the Supreme Court's ruling in the Hobbs case. What this has done effectively is forced outdoor amphitheaters to create nonprofit entities that they can receive noise permits to exceed these limits, because a lot of these places are in areas which could be considered residential, and 55 is for a large venue like the Ford Amphitheater, or like Red Rocks. Although Red Rocks is a city owned facility, it just wouldn't be it wouldn't work. And so, at least for the time being, some of the larger public outdoor amphitheater for-profit outdoor amphitheaters have created nonprofit arms that they can receive permits to exceed state noise standards is a temporary solution. But I think what we've heard is that there's probably gonna be some legislative action to change this to some degrees, because it's not workable if you want to have a live music industry that's outside when you get to the larger scale facilities. And so that's more or less a summary of the case. Happy to answer any specific questions about it, but it really is a question about statutory interpretation and what does the exception, or Part 11 of the Noise Act, mean in terms of local governments being able to issue permits to exceed state noise standards.
I have a couple of questions, but I want to see if anybody else does first. Okay, do we have any indication what the legislative action might be when it comes to this?
I have not heard anything specifically on this other than a broad desire to do something. Maybe number of permits not to exceed a certain number. Maybe changing up the numbers a little bit in terms of the decibel limits. Creating more exceptions basically into the act. Because I think something the Supreme Court went through was the legislative history. Making their determination on what Section 11 meant, and legislators recognized then that you wouldn't be able to have outdoor concerts basically under these limits, but for whatever reason they only allowed public and nonprofit entities to exceed them at that time.
Do you know what the impetus was for the Abatement Act to begin with?
I mean, I think originally it was just to they talk about it in the case, but it really was just to preserve serene environments without noise. And this was done in the 70s originally. And so much different time in Colorado's, development and history. It was amended in the 80s because of, what they had realized, that if you were to strictly apply this, you couldn't have any outdoor events. which is where the exception came in part 11, for local governments to issue permits.
Couple of questions, Joe. I guess first question, because we were considering here in Lyons doing a greater than 55 decibel limit. We had proposed as a draft form for discussion purposes 65 decibels, and it produced a huge outcry from our musicians and our venue owners that that wasn't feasible. It was too low. If we can no longer do that, do you see? I don't see any way that we could preserve our local music venue culture and industry, if you want to call it that, with this nonprofit exception. I mean, there's no way that A Lodge and Main Stage and Riverbend, they're not nonprofits. They may occasionally host nonprofit events, true, but not for their weekend, day in, day out, weekend to weekend business, which is substantial in Lyons. And they will tell you that they can't run their business profitably without that. So do you think the nonprofit exemption really does anything for us in terms of those private for-profit businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I think as I kind of mentioned earlier, only the kind of the larger entities have been able to really pursue that avenue. So maybe a Planet Bluegrass could, but I don't know if, an A Lodge could or a Main Stage could realistically, or anybody else that wanted to have a live event could pursue that avenue. Means they certainly could if they wanted to, but it's not, I don't think it's practical as it would be for a Ford amphitheater per se to do it, which they already have done at this point. Which is why I think you're going to see some state action on this, because I think people realize that it's not realistic for the smaller venues to do that.
And by the same token, even if the statute was amended to say you can issue 15 permits for a for-profit venue, per year, that's not gonna be enough for what our local music venues do, right?
I mean, that's a policy
That's not
call.
a solution that's gonna address Lyon's situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is why he needs to talk to your, state representatives on this. I mean, I think it's a policy call as to how this gets amended, right? At the end of the day, I think the most obvious answer would be to create a limited exception for a number of permits, but there could be other, changes as well,
I don't
increasing
think that's
limits.
necessary. Is there any move by CML or anybody else to basically have the legislature grant local governments the authority to set their own noise limits? That's what a lot of governments that do. The 55 decibel limit is not standard. There's a lot of places that have gone beyond that. But now the question, at least for statutory towns, is can we? And the Supreme Court probably says no.
Yeah, Supreme Court has said no. I mean, as the law exists today, I mean, pretty clearly, I think. But I think, CML has said, pretty publicly they intend to, amend this. How that is to be, I don't know yet. They have not publicly spoke on that yet. And, at least the last I had spoken with CML specifically on this issue, they said there was, kind of very broad support from, the associations that represent public music venues, from the larger venues, from the Bars Association, Bars and Taverns Association. So, I mean, there seems to be a fairly broad swath of legislative support to do something. But what that is at this time, I can't say.
Does this just affect statutory towns, or does it also affect home rule cities? For example, we know that Golden has, I think it's a 65 decibel limit.
Yeah, it's an open question. I think if you were to read the decision carefully, I think there's at least show some intent to also bind home rule municipalities. But if you're a home rule city at this point in time and a home rule attorney, you're not going to concede that until they say definitively. But I think, there's at least some thought that the decision was intended to restrict home rule cities as well.
I mean, that's probably good from our standpoint, right? Because that would be more larger cities with more clout in the legislature pushing for a change. Whereas if it's just statutory towns, our clout in the legislature is pretty limited, I would say.
It is, and I think it's a broader issue for CML anyway of cities and towns having authority over their own noise.
And one more question that you can answer, which is, I mean, Salida went from trial all the way to the Colorado Supreme Court on this. If we were to say, we're gonna try it anyway, let's do a 65 or 70 decibel ordinance, and somebody sued us, what legal costs are we looking at? How much did it cost Salida to litigate this from start to finish?
So I wasn't directly involved in Salida, litigation, so I couldn't tell you, but I mean, it was a multi-year effort, district court, Court of Appeals, Supreme Court. You can imagine how expensive that gets. A lot of that occurred before my current law firm was formed, so I don't know what the history was in the billings for that,
Try to find
um,
out.
but I'm sure it was not cheap. Um, as to what the question on what it would cost to defend a lawsuit. And, I don't think Lions could get as far, right? Because there's already pretty definitive case law. You couldn't do this.
Yeah.
And so you'd fail at the district court level, I think, fairly
I mean,
easily.
There was I think an argument that I saw somewhere that Salida had a permitting system, whereas we were considering a general ordinance rather than permits. But do you see any kind of a meaningful distinction there?
I don't, because the statute is fairly clear that you can as we discussed earlier, you can be more restrictive but not more permissive. And the only real exception to that was that Part 11, which allowed you to give out permits to be more permissive. And so there's really no other place in the statute to look at and say, here's where we can be more permissive on noise. That was really the one place, and the place that people were relying upon to do that.
So Stuart, I have a question for you. Have you seen noise ordinances that have been particularly successful? And if you have, what in your view makes a successful noise ordinance?
So you have a couple of issues if you're gonna have an ordinance. One, costs, I guess. And one of them is, how do you regulate this? How do you police this? Because if you have people that have to do these measurements, and you have the police, or you have a person, you have to have an instrument, you have to have training. I train my kids how to do this, so it's not like it's real difficult. So yeah, Golden has a couple different things. Jefferson County does too, but Douglas County has tried to do that, where they've said you can do. They have all these farms, and people want to have weddings and stuff there, and so they said, okay, you could be 35 dB on the property. So they've been fairly restrictive of that, and then they said, but you have to have a minimum acreage for your big outdoor venues. I don't think, in all honesty, I don't think A Lodge and Main Street are an issue for you guys. I think it's irrelevant, because they have commercial all the way around them, and they're not gonna make it really loud. You might have complaints from people, but it's again, you're back to this audibility thing, not a compliance thing. And maybe that when you have the big bluegrass festival in the spring, the summer, that's probably does exceed the noise level, but it's like once a year. So it's like, okay, there's this permit that you can do. Some towns, I've heard that via the grapevine from some other consultants, that Telluride has pretty much said, we're just gonna do what we want, we don't really care. Their big festival they have every summer, they've just taken that, we just don't care.
Federal allows up to 105 decibels sometimes.
Whatever, they're just like, we're gonna do this, and it's once a year, and we're just not gonna worry about it. So the big thing you guys gotta consider, if you're gonna do this, how do you police this? Then do you have a person that's what they sit around and wait? Boulder used to have noise control officers. That's what they did in the evenings. That was their job, but that's a big cost. You're a small community, so not an easy answer. I don't think it's as bad as everyone thinks it is here. It's not like Red Rocks.
Do you understand that every outdoor music event that's put on all summer long by Main Stage, by A Lodge, by Riverbend, they all violate our local noise ordinance, and you're telling us we don't have a problem?
Well, I think you
understand?
you have your ordinance.
It's ridiculous. That's what
Yeah.
we're trying to use. A number of us have used.
Yeah, I mean,
So
but I think if I look at it is in terms of other noise ordinances that I've dealt with, that I don't think it's a horrible issue. It's not like some of the other ones I've seen where, like in downtown Denver, where they had, when they first started to gentrify downtown, and they had commercial and state, outdoor things, and then they had residences right above. That was contentious for a while, till Denver figured out how to deal with that one.
I'm trying to make sense of what you're saying in terms of what we should do here. You're saying
I would-
if we had a noise ordinance, a noise standard in Lyons, either by our local ordinance or by just defaulting to the state standard of 55 decibels, you don't think, based on your measurements, that it would be a problem?
I don't think you have a big problem. You have an audibility issue, but when I don't know how to say this. I was walking around making the measurements, and a couple of couples came up. You should really measure the construction. I'm sorry. You should really measure the construction noise. It was just horrible when they were paving. I was like, well, they're paving your street. What do you want? So, yeah, your noise ordinance is sort of strange, as is a couple of other communities in Colorado.
And of course, it is an audibility standard. That's what it says. Audible 25 feet from the source.
But you can't mow your lawn. You can't have a hot tub outside.
You can't have a live music there.
Yeah, you can't talk to your neighbor out because that would exceed audibility criteria. So, I just don't see, I don't see some of this as being huge. I mean, I know you have to address it. But I think if you go down the path of how do you enforce this, there's a lot of cost there. With having people on staff.
Well, and I think that, a number of a lot of the input we've received is the fact that there are multiple venues having events at the same time. And so it's sort of like, you've got this band here and that band here and that band here. And I happen to live on the north side of town where I actually can hear A Lodge and Main Stage at the same time. And, so I understand that, but it's also not, it's not that it's loud, it's that I can hear it's like two people talking in my ears at the same time.
Both of those places could be reconfigured so that you had, I would say like a band shell type configuration or a tent or something where you're going to focus the noise more towards the south, towards the commercial areas. There's things you can do, they can do that aren't going to be horribly expensive. So they can minimize some of that impact towards the north. The other thing we've done for some other venues is just say, at such and such a distance from the stage, it's gotta be less than some decibel. So less than 75 or 80 or, 10 feet from the stage or something. So there's things you can do in that venue also.
Yeah, and I think no one would argue that our current noise ordinance doesn't make much sense. I think that's.
Yeah, I think they could go away.
If it did go away, if we just struck the ordinance that we had before we negotiated some new strategies,
You don't have,
would we have,
you're in Boulder County.
well, that's my question. Well, let me just ask that question.
That's okay.
If we did not have our own code, would we then be subject to the more restrictive of Boulder County or the state?
State, just the state.
That's the state.
Then it would revert to the
The state.
state.
Okay,
Yeah.
The question would be to what extent you could enforce the state, standards.
and Brandon, was there any discussion of whether the state had the authority to permit exceptions?
So it reads, under the statute that any political subdivision in the state of Colorado, which would include the state itself, and so city, town, county, special district, technically, they could all issue permits to a nonprofit or themselves, or someone who's using, government property on behalf of the local government.
Brandon, could you amplify a little bit about what you just said about the ability of the state law to be enforced within town limits. I mean, there are all kinds of state laws that apply within town limits that we don't have local provisions of, right? So why would this one be any different?
Yeah, I mean, you'd be writing it into district court, right, versus a municipal court.
Correct.
And so
That-
to what extent
That would
people
be
are
the main
willing to,
effect. If somebody were cited for violating the state noise statute, it would go to district court rather than municipal, is the main effect, right?
that's correct. And at least in practically speaking, I think a lot of police officers don't like doing that, writing under, unless they have a local, something local, either the county or local level to cite to. And so it's not that you can't necessarily do it. It's just, it's not typical and not preferred, put it that way.
And to follow up on Lee's question, I think what he was asking was, is there any question about the state's authority to by the next legislature, CML or somebody proposes something to change the 55 decibel limit to either different decibel limit or grant local governments the authority to set their own noise levels. It's not constitutional, it's just statutory.
Yeah, this is just statutory. It's not in the state constitution, so it could be changed via any sort of legislative enactment. The only restriction would be if it was in the constitution, right? Then it would take a vote of the people to change, but that's not the case here.
Imagine the ballot measure.
You know, if we kind of laugh, but if enough local music venues, including some large ones in big cities, get put out of business by a 55 decibel standard, I could see them
I could too.
signing up somebody to do a constitutional amendment to
I could
change
too.
that.
I don't think it'll get that far. I think this is something the legislature will likely take up. I mean, that's kind of, the understanding, I think of CML at this point. And, nobody wants to be the villain when it comes to shutting down music venues. And I think along those lines, the whole nonprofit thing is a non-starter. Like, why would we add that level of complexity and cost and all of the things that go along with it to our local music venues to form a nonprofit to get around a state law? I mean, it's.
And the reality is they're for-profit businesses.
Yeah.
So somebody would challenge that as just a legal fiction and I don't
Yeah.
think they would win.
Yeah, I don't think we wanna go there.
I would just stress for anybody that has any input to CML that a given number of permits per year isn't gonna solve the problem because most of our local music venues do at least twice a weekend during the summer. So you're talking, I don't know, at least 25 or so. A lot of them do main stage does Thursday night. The number of wedding and outdoor events at Riverbend is quite a few, so you'd have to have, I don't know, 50 permits a year. or something
No,
like
it's
that. And if you
absurd.
do that, what's the point? You know?
What's the point? And it adds pressure on staff too, staff time too, to issue those permits, so. Yeah, I'll be interested to see what the legislature starts with and when it comes to this.
One thing I'd like to see the town, is basically before the legislative session starts, is perhaps consider doing a resolution supporting giving local governments control over their own noise ordinances. That's where it belongs, because we're different than other places. Estes Park really restricted their outdoor stuff because they're not really an outdoor music town, but we are. It's a big part of our summer economy.
Well, we can do a resolution. We can also we could write a letter to the legislature, to our representatives and start, making some noise about that, because we're not alone in this at all.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, is there any way to offer testimony when they,
Oh, sure, yeah.
because we can send all of our business owners down there.
It's hard to ask people to spend an entire day at the state capitol, but
Oh, Eric,
yeah,
you need to be glad
everybody
to
would be
do it.
welcome. Are you volunteering, Eric?
Yeah, Eric,
He's not
Eric
here.
and I will go. I'll go with you
Well, we
when I
can,
get back.
we can all go. It's yeah, quite a field trip.
Yeah.
Okay,
One more comment.
yeah,
So if you're gonna go that route with sort of putting some limits on, I think you need to be careful on saying, hey, our music venues are this, but we have other noises in the community. So that if I put a hot tub in my backyard right next to the property line, next to your bedroom window. And you hear that, whatever the noise of the hot tub is, that's a different thought process of a violation than like a music venue. So if you're gonna have this, I think you need to discern the difference. Music venues are over here, we're gonna deal with them this way, but we're gonna deal with other noise, like with this, like the state statute was, or how they would do it in Boulder County.
Our local noise ordinance, it already does distinguish between amplified outdoor music and other not gatherings
Okay.
of persons, and that it's already got the distinction.
It's not very enforceable. Other questions? We're not going to ask him to stay around all evening, so.
No, you got it. So
Is
now's
there
your
anything
time.
else you want to ask or comment on? They'll be discussing this toward the end.
So if you have any more questions, have Lisa just send me an email with the questions and I'll answer them as best I can.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for
Appreciate
your
it.
work for the presentation. We
I
appreciate
appreciate
it.
it. It's fun to come up and see clients differently than I drive through all the time.
Well, I know, now you gotta stop and spend some money.
Right.
Thank you, Stuart.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, nice to meet you. All right, so then, we'll take a break and reconvene at 7 o'clock for our regular meeting. Thanks, everybody. We're also proud.
Should be too bad.
All right, evening, everybody. I will call the Monday, November 17th, 2025 Lions Board of Trustees meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Rogan,
Present?
Mayor Pro Tem Williams, Commissioner Hamrick,
Present.
Commissioner Daddy,
Present.
Commissioner Lowell,
President,
Commissioner Brownie.
I'm sorry, we're trustees tonight.
Oh, trustee, sorry,
You still have the planning commission.
yeah. And trustee Lee Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. The pledge of allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone. I'll read the land acknowledgement, then we'll take a moment of silence. We must acknowledge with respect as non-native people that the land on which we stand, live, and learn is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
so
Is there a second? Second. All right, I would like to move that we delete general business item 3, which is discussion direction on the town hall environmental assessment report, since that item didn't have its workshop this evening. Is there a second on that? A second. Okay, to vote on that amendment.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Any other amendments to the agenda? Okay, let's vote on the agenda as amended.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, let's move along to audience business. Welcome, audience. If you would like to speak, there's a sign-up sheet over there, and if you haven't signed up, don't worry about it. We'll get to you after the folks who signed up have. When you approach the podium, please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 4 minutes. We ask that everybody keep their comments pertaining to the business of the town and address the board as a whole. And then after everybody has spoken, the board will have the opportunity to reply, person by person, and then staff will also have that opportunity. Okay, who do we have?
Kate Sparks.
Hey Sparks, 2169 Apple Valley Road. Good evening. 3 things from the Housing and Human Services Commission officially. First of all is the reminder, health enrollment, December 3rd. We'll have both the regular insurance, hopefully support, ACA. There'll be the Medicaid person there, so all the Medicaid funded programs, they'll have someone to help with disabilities. This should be very familiar, we plastered it everywhere. Second, our next meeting is December 8th, a Monday. We're gonna have a very short regular meeting, and then from 5 to 6, we are going to host Senator Marchman, and she will update us on Proposition 123 funding and other funding that she would anticipate might be cut in the upcoming legislature because of the really challenging budget situation there again. As well as any information she can give us that, you know, the governor is pondering Medicaid cuts, which is not a pleasant thought. We're going to encourage folks to attend, and we're going to get the word out, both to learn about this because it's scary stuff, but there's stuff we can do. But also to share their experiences about what they've experienced possibly already. There's been some different fiscal impacts for different people, and how they cope, especially how they plan to cope if the health insurance premiums supplement isn't available. She needs that information, those stories to take forward. So please tell people we're just starting to let people know, to come on down and learn. So lastly, our meetings are hybrid meetings, and our last meeting, I just have a question if any of the other commissions have experienced this, but we had someone sign in. We didn't get a name, and we go around and introduce ourselves, and there was no response. And we checked, it wasn't muted, everything is two-way of communication. And we didn't have a name, and I didn't write down whatever was up there. But there was no response, and I'm just wondering if any of the other commissions have had this same response. It's, we're hardly controversial commission at whole. So I'm not suspicious of anything, but it's sort of hard to have a meeting when you have a silence there and not knowing if someone is just hanging out or some poor 2-year-old turned it on. And, well, thank you much.
Thank you. Steve Sims?
Good evening, 809 Fifth Avenue in town. Mayor, trustees, I'd like to thank you for your time this evening, staff. First and foremost, thank you for your time and detailed deliberations on all these previous meetings related to the sound noise issue. And thank you for procuring the sound study to get a nice baseline overview. When Chris and Sarah first came to us as a community for the new river bend, their initial proposal was quite an outrageous ask from my perspective. And it came across as if they were wanting to just negate all of the prior work that had happened with the prior versions of Riverbend. And then in a recent talk with Chris, he explained to me now at the level at which he's working to keep the sound and the amplification under control. And after that talk at the LCF meeting, I've really come to trust Chris. His intent, truly has a true intention on what he's wanting to try to do for the community and for the neighbors. And maybe at some point in time, he could come explain to you a little bit about what he's doing. But he's gone to the level of even calling the police on himself and his staff to try to control noise issues on his property and self-measuring. I think the town and the community resources tied up in something like the prior riverbed or the prior Lion's Den was a crazy amount of time that was invested. Extremely annoying for citizens and for the town staff. And let's use that experience to help create a viable business, other viable businesses, and avoid being negatively branded if another Lion's Den were to come into town. So for those businesses that are doing the right thing, we don't want them to get pulled under the coattail of a business that's really out of control. So I support the creation of a license per business. And I think it would work with what we heard earlier this evening. I believe it will aid the town and community with situations like a future Lion's Den were to come to town. Our new revised ordinance must recognize that sustained bass frequencies, the thumping, are extremely annoying. They're hard to measure. Bass noise may be considered as compliant, but it is still critically annoying. Simply, the further the source from the sound, the less predictable the sound will travel to the intended destination. The broader scope of the ordinance is related to road noises from many sources. Like Holly, you mentioned the compounded issues of many venues going on at the same time. I want to help work on the environmental noise, the road noise, the light industry noise, and amplified noise issue as a compound in a big picture. Longmont is involved in an early study with CDOT and an international traffic enforcement company called Census Group. And they're doing some pretty interesting measuring and studies that might be useful. So I support having businesses make measurements closer to the source, like Chris is doing. He knows his venue. He knows when he's inside, he knows what's going on outside because he's correlated it in his mind. And he knows inside if it's getting too loud. he doesn't even have to go out and make the measurements anymore. He's got it down to that level. He's truly invested in his business. Vocals are lost over distance, but bass continues to travel and propagate. So low frequency should be something that should be considered as you work toward the ordinance. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is that the timer? Timer, yeah. That's great. Anyone else like to address the board? Okay, we'll close audience business and follow up. Trustee Williams?
Steve, thanks for your comments. It's certainly something we all care about. I appreciate that you and it sounds like Chris and Sarah are trying to balance your own interests and community preferences and community interests. That's certainly what we're trying to do too. And we'll talk later about how to reconcile that with the boundaries that are set by the state and that might exist in our current ordinances. Thanks.
Mark?
Yeah, I'll reserve my detailed comments for the discussion later about the noise ordinance, but I don't think Chris is the only venue owner that's sensitive to community concerns. I've talked with several of them. I think they pay attention to what they hear from not only their customers, but from residents. I think in general, our music venue owners do a good job of trying to accommodate community concerns.
Thank you. Trustee Lowe?
Okay, no, we've never had any issues. I think in 10 years of doing remotes with the ecology board, perhaps that indicates the level of interest. Perhaps we should have more anonymous people, but no, we haven't run into that.
Trustee Dutton?
Yep, I'm really happy that Senator Marchman is coming, but I didn't quite catch the time. Was it 5 p.m.?
5 to 6
5 to 6 p.m. Okay, great. Thank
at the
you.
library.
At the library. Fantastic. And I agree with Trustee Brown, and I know of other property owners who are being quite intentional with the measuring of the sound, and they are like personally like focused on regulating that. And I agree, I was at the same event at Riverbend, and I knew when we were going through the development review process that just having that structure and having the music indoors was going to change everything. And I could see also Chris was paying careful attention to the sound. I mean, he's very much on top of things. So I'm glad you're seeing an improvement there. And I'm glad you're able to acknowledge that with him directly. So thanks for bringing that feedback.
Trustee Hammer?
Yeah, Steve, I'll just echo what another fellow trustee said. So thank you for reaching out to Chris, because I know that started off as a very contentious project, and I'm glad to hear he's, has that in the back of his mind at all times, and it makes me think as we go through this ordinance discussion. Yeah, there's measurements we heard from the consultants, and it's more about audibility and other factors. So I think if we can somehow incent good behavior, and get these business owners to pay attention to it, I think we go a long way in improving things. So thank you.
Thanks. And Kay, as you know, I was at that meeting where there was the mystery attendee. And it was fine, obviously, but I think it begs the question of whether we should consider some rules around remote participation for boards and commissions, just so that if people are attending, they have to turn on their camera and use their real name so that we can avoid anything like we all saw that one fateful evening. So that may be a policy coming soon. And Steve, thank you. Appreciate your remarks. Administrator Simonson, do you have any input?
No, other than, if, I think as a chair, it might be uncomfortable, but it would be okay to say we have in our meetings, we do have guidelines that we'd like to know who is here, and may we ask if they don't answer then that might be another indication, but we do have a couple groups that have gone to the panelist invitation so that you don't get rude interruptions partway through your meeting that you're not expecting, because they are not someone local. It could be someone else just bombing your meeting. So we could have a couple options, but let's see if it happens again and, yeah.
All right, thank you, everybody. Okay, Boulder County Sheriff's Office report. Good evening.
Good evening. Got my sidekick with me tonight. She will be, we will start kind of in late December and then in through January, doing a lot more intense shadowing. She'll be coming in on some earlier shifts, riding with me, kind of getting a more up close and personal ties into the town. So she can kick off running as good as she can when she takes over for me in January 25th. If that's what I'm talking about.
After which you'll be the sidekick.
I will be the sidekick, absolutely. The Halloween parade went off great. Again, kudos to Dave and Justin and his crew and Camp for helping putting all that together. It seemed like it was a little more lightly attended this year. We closed it up, I think, a little bit earlier than normal, but still, it was a great turnout. And all that. We're ready for the parade of lights. I meant to send the ops plan over to everybody today, but it's done and complete. I'll try to get that up to you guys tomorrow. Going with the ship bids with the department and all the transition. The only news that I have so far is we will be getting Jason Ryan back. He was our K-9 officer. He loves it up here. He bidded for this as his first choice. He'll be on the day shift front side, so he'll be on my team, obviously supervised by Sharon. But he was a great asset to this town while he was up here on night shift. So he's super excited to be here on a day shift for the next following year. So I think that's great. I don't have the folks that are going to be in on the other shifts. That's still kind of coming in, but we were the first to get that bid in, and he's going to take up at least one spot. So, and as you know, Jeff has retired. He had his shoulder surgery. He's doing well. He'll be recovering at headquarters doing some light duty, and then he'll take the early retirement package December 24th. So that will be that. I hope that the information I sent you was helpful in your workshop today. What I had decided to do, as I was telling you guys before, I had my stat guys just put together a quick brief. How many calls are we getting in the town of Lyons, specifically the town proper, not outside, through that date range of May through October, which seems to be obviously the spring, summer, and early fall months. As you saw, there was 21 complaints. There was a chart there that definitely categorized everything out. The one thing that I wanted to point out that Victoria asked about early on was some of the addresses don't appear to be like an actual address, especially 400 High Street. So when those are called in as an area. So somebody in the address column, that's where the complaint is at, not where the callers come calling from. So the 400 block of Main was what someone called in saying, I think it's around 400 block of Main, or the 700 block of High Street, and so on and so forth. Some of them in that column are specific. Obviously, 501 West Main, the plant and grass, right? So the other thing that I did want to point out too is that I dug in just a little bit deeper and talked to my dispatchers today. They pulled up some other information that's not on this report, but the only thing I just wanted to point out from some of that information, I won't go into it all, but one person's responsible for 4 or 5 of these complaints of loud noise music. So just food for thought and information that you can always have somebody that's just not happy with their surroundings, and they become a repeated person that calls in and wants to complain about whatever music, or they might be ultra sensitive. Not judging or anything like that, but that information is important because it can easily skew numbers. You know, is it one person or 2 people that are just upset about everything, so you've generated 50 complaints, or is it 49 people that are living here in town that are upset about something and all complaining? I think that paints a different picture than that. So I definitely wanted you guys to understand that as you go into the further talks of the noise ordinance. So if there's any questions about that, or there's information that you guys want, that is obtainable, I can try to get that into another report and get that to you guys as you make your decisions. That's all I have.
Thank you. Questions?
Hi, thank you so much for your extra duty on at the Halloween parade.
Oh, you betcha.
I was standing towards I guess the west end of Maine, so kind of at the corner of like 36 in Maine. And I could see there was a long line of cars backed up coming from Estes and heading east. And that was right before you reopened, like I would say towards the end of the parade, probably between, I don't know, 6:45 and 7. And so I'm just wondering if you heard of any drivers complaining about being backed up there.
I think I only heard of 2 drivers ever complained about backup, which is about average. I usually hear from 1 or 2 people. And it was just that, and it wasn't even a formal complaint. It was kind of a shout out of one of my guys, what the bleep bleep type thing, you know, because they waited just a little bit too long. I will always say that, the beginning and end of that switch is where you get the jam up, and it's an accordion effect. If something happens over here at 4th and Broadway, because we flash those lights so no one stops, okay? But if all of a sudden a group of pedestrians cross outside the crosswalk and everyone stops, it just becomes an accordion effect. And it really takes literally 10 or 15 seconds of stop traffic to actually create a backup like that. So that's why we do the switch over so early, so that we can work out any bugs in the beginning and then get everybody flowing before the parade even starts, so that we don't have to deal with the volume of cars. Towards the end there, I don't know if we had anything specific that caused it or if it was just normal volume, but only 1 or 2 people kind of shouted out at my guys and said they were unhappy waiting however long they had to wait.
And just out of curiosity, how long do you think the average wait time was for somebody heading east that way?
10 minutes.
Okay.
I had one deputy tell me it was a 4-mile line.
All the way up to. One way up, one way down, a lot of people in the same spot at the same time.
Are there gonna be signs letting people know when the parade of lights is? So, you know, like.
Well, we had
warning
that on the
parade of
message
lights.
board.
Yeah.
We did do that, yeah.
Okay,
The only, in years past, we've also had Loveland Barricade do a variable message board up near the river church. Just advising for a week long that at this day and time, expect some backups. That worked well.
are we doing that this year?
That I don't believe we
I
are.
can make a note and see if we can still do it.
I think that's what I do.
And typically the closure for is it the same length of closure for the Halloween parade and the parade of lights? Is it like an hour approximately or?
Approximately, yeah. It's
Approximately
about the
1
same
hour.
time, yeah. When I was up here before, we worked really hard on making it consistent because we had 2 different venues that created 2 different traffic patterns. When we got the idea of doing the switch over like we do and moving, especially the Halloween parade, getting that out of Sandstone to start and having them cross traffic to start at the elementary school was huge. So the Christmas parade starts over there as well. So we keep this same pattern so everyone's used to it. There's a slight change in the light parade where the section from 3rd down to kind of like Smoking Dave's and 2nd is more open because the floats have to stage there. So there's a little bit of difference between how you get from the west side of town through and out on 2nd. For the first part of the parade, for about the first 20 minutes or so when the floats are coming out, that is a hard closure and no one's gonna get through. So you're just gonna have to stop and enjoy the parade. 10 minutes goes, 15 minutes goes by, that last float gets off of 2nd and starts up Main. Then that part opens up for the float in and out. I've really never had a problem with that area. We seem to pick good days and everyone seems to know. So the complaint levels that we get through dispatch are really next to nothing. So it's either hearsay or someone in town got upset because they had to go somewhere and they let one of us know it, or after the fact, they let somebody in town know it, but we're trying.
You guys do a great job.
Yeah.
Every year. Anything else? All right, thank you so
Awesome.
much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
We'll see you next time.
Be safe. All right, administrator's report, please.
Thank you. I've included my report in your packet. Some of the highlights, we are really thrilled to
announce that the Laverne Johnson Stream Bank is done. It was a very smooth, quick project. It looks great if you haven't seen it.
It does.
We've also converted two. If you can picture where all the tent camping is along the river on the south side of the park, there were a couple picnic tables intermingled in there. And in the summer days, weekends, that would really create some confusion because we get large groups of people at a picnic table in the midst of campers who are paying to be there and have their space. We have moved those two campsites, or those two picnic sites. We have eliminated them. We're adding two over by the quarry shelter. And our goal this summer will be to have everything along that south of the edge of the park is the campers. And just trying to help with kind of the flow, the questions we get from picnickers of why can campers have little camp stoves, but we can't. It hopefully just clear up some of that confusion. I'm really excited to do that this year. The other project that is 99% of the way done is the new October, November hole parking. We did include a picture. It looks amazing. We still have to do some signage and dogway stations. But they have made a short connection from the parking lot over to the actual November hole, so they don't have to go down and around as well. So that project is done. So thank you for financing that at the last minute. It went very smoothly and quickly. Ewald water and electric undergrounding continues. If you have questions, I'll take those. Street sweeping. Interestingly, the only days they could get us in for the month of November are Tuesday and Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So it's going to take a little work with visitors here in town with families. To the north side of town will be swept on Tuesday, the south side on Wednesday. So we're gonna have to get kind of creative and hopefully can move some cars as they come through and you can put them right back. But we will do our best. As was mentioned earlier, tomorrow night, we're meeting with some of the neighborhoods of the Confluence area and the public, whoever wants to attend, to just start the initial discussion on some of the issues that are impacting the residents who live there and the nonprofits that are trying to operate some community events there. So we're going to start those discussions tomorrow night. They'll be at the library at 6 or 5:30. Holiday festivities are coming up. I'm not going to get too into that yet. We have a little time, but the weekend of December 5th through the 7th will be lots of activities happening here in town. I put in an update, or Kim put in an update on wildfire rebates, if there's any questions there. The ADA curb ramps seem to be going as promised. CDOT said it would take about 1 week per block, and I saw they finished up 400 block, and we're working on the 300, and the final product isn't nearly as impactful as it looked like when they were ripped up. So I hope they will work with us to put back our sandstone and our gardens. And then before we get to the finance report, I did have a couple items regarding grant submittals that I know was causing some questions for some folks. So I want to make sure you have an opportunity to ask about those. And not to forget, we have Urban Renewal Authority meeting this Thursday at 5 p.m. Only one item on the agenda, so should move too long. Any questions for me before we move to finance?
I took a walk over today, the parking lot does look great. And the path, I guess the path is going to be at the far end of the parking lot that's gonna be improved to get up to the November hole.
Yeah.
The only thing I would ask on the signage is that among that you put one of the fishing regulation signs
Sure.
at the start of that. Because I noted that, it appears that the gate that people used to come through next to where the flume and
Yes.
Is going to be shut off, because there's a very stern sign up there that says, stay out of here.
Yeah.
And that's where one of the other signs for the fishing regulations used to be, in one of those old town signs, so.
Okay.
I was just asked that that be included. I don't know whether you're gonna put the billboard sign up there like we do for.
We'll have something that identifies it as a Town of Lyons parcel. And then, we'll have all of the regular small signs, symbols.
Yeah, but if Dave, if it's possible for
Yep.
Dave to put one of those singular signs up there,
Sure.
like used to be in the head of the October hole, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, looks good, thank you.
Trustee Datu?
Yeah, I just have a question around the communications for the fall street sweeping. Since the Thanksgiving school break begins on Friday,
Mhm.
and this is going to be taking place over the break, and I'm concerned about families who will be leaving town for the entire break and making sure that they have already moved their vehicles before they leave for the airport or the road trip or wherever they're headed. So I don't know when you're thinking of communicating that.
He's already started some,
Okay,
but I know when you're getting ready to go on a trip, that's the last thing on your
I would
mind.
definitely push that this week. So that people are moving their vehicles before they leave, because then they're just stuck there and nobody can move it.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Bart?
What time is the URA meeting on Thursday?
5 o'clock, and it should be fairly short, and it can be virtual or in person.
On the housing coordinator grant, Mayor Rubin and I talked about that, had some things to say about that, but during trustee reports, not the administrative report.
Okay. If no other questions, Director Eystone, are you able to present the finance report?
Yes, good evening.
Hi.
In your packet are the finances through September. I wasn't able to reconcile October quite yet, but you will see those at the next meeting. Overall, things are looking really well. Sales tax, we are starting to see a small decline when you look at it from a month-to-month basis, but our year-to-date numbers are still higher than 2024 by about 5.45%. So that's still in the positive. We do have one local business that's currently working with the Colorado Department of Revenue on a payment plan. They've kind of been a little hit or miss. They'll make one payment and then not make one payment and then skip one. And so we are working with that business, and they actually had already started proactively working with the Department of Revenue. So that's good. Other than that, in the next report, you'll see the budget appropriation, the amendment that we approved in October. So those numbers will be reflected as well in that report. And we will likely probably have to have a budget amendment in the water and wastewater side before year end or at the very beginning of 2026 for the 2025 year. Expected for things like chemicals, waste hauling, things like that. So expect to see that as well. And that is all I have until we get to the budget, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Director Eystone? Trustee Hammer?
I was looking at the sales tax local versus non-local businesses, and would it be possible to put in a couple prior years monthly numbers in there?
Oh,
Sure,
the
I
actual
could-
percentages.
Excuse me, percentages. It'd just be
Sure.
interesting to see if there's seasonal trends or there could be some other trend where,
Yeah, I can definitely do that. I started tracking this, I believe I have from 2023. I'd have to go back and check, but I can definitely include, just an extra couple years of local column so that we don't have to squeeze in the non-local piece as well. But yeah, I can definitely do that.
yeah, and whatever data you have, it'd be helpful to see. how things are
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're welcome.
Trustee Datu?
Can I make a comment as opposed to a question?
Sure.
I just want to thank voters who voted for the 0.5% increase in sales tax, because without that, we wouldn't see an increase in sales tax. And so I just want to make a note here on record that, the additional $25,000 in September is putting us right above par, a little bit above where we were last year in September, thanks to that 0.5% increase. So thank you to everybody who voted for that.
Yeah.
It's making a difference.
And I'm looking forward to seeing the sales tax bump that's gonna happen after Western Stars reopens.
true.
Thank you, Director Easton.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move on to legal update. Attorney Dittman?
And no legal update for me this time.
Okay. Then we will move right along to ordinances and public hearings. The first item is a public hearing on resolution 2025-76. A resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, summarizing revenues and expenditures for each fund and adopting a budget for the town of Lyons, Colorado for the calendar year 2026. Director Isto?
All right. In your packet and received a couple of days prior to the packet, you received the proposed budget. It is a little bit different from the draft budget that was submitted on October 15th. A few changes are listed in the staff report. So most of those were decreases by removing things that the board decided were no longer needed, or we decided that we didn't need to budget as much in expenditures. So things like the Lions Chamber dues, those went away. We decreased the RTD and Z trip costs. We did decrease a small amount in the LAHC request and increased for the Student Advisory Committee. And then we did increase the electric fund revenue by about $73,000 to account for those electric rate increases that were already adopted. So with that, we do have all funds projected to meet their 3-month reserve. We do have a couple funds that are using prior year fund balances for capital purposes. So the general fund, electric fund, water and sewer fund, and the parks fund, and the stormwater fund. So those were all for capital projects or debt service. None of that is covering the operational expenses. Let's see, we do have our debt service in there, as well as the transfers from the general funds to the capital projects for streets. And we are assigning a $50,000 assignment on fund balance to set aside for potential clawbacks for the flood. One operational item of note is the sheriff's contract that is increasing by about 19% for a total of contract of $755,121 in 2026. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, questions for Director Ister? All right, no questions on the budget, so I will open the public hearing. And as usual, we have a full house for the budget. For the public hearing. People left. I know people left. Right?
So good, we're still doing.
All right, well, if no one would like to offer testimony about the budget, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Yep, I move to approve resolution 2025-76, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, summarizing revenues and expenditures for each fund and adopting a budget for the town of Lyons, Colorado for the calendar year 2026.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I want to note a couple of things, even though there's not an audience here much for this, there were a lot of comments this year submitted
Yes.
from the public. It was the biggest response I think that we've ever had to requesting public input for the budget, and that was much appreciated. And I wanted to assure the people that spent their time to submit their comments at the board and its budget workshops did take those into serious consideration in trying to set our priorities. Somewhat related to, and the top priority that the citizens indicated was infrastructure of several different types. And I want to speak to a couple of things about that. There were some discussions without a vote actually being held during our budget workshops about, in particular, some of the streets and stormwater related projects. In the capital fund budget for next year, there's a $269,000 item that has a list of possible places that could be spent. 3rd Avenue, Kelling, I think another place. There's also like a $98,000 item for 2026 for continuing the road-based patch and repair program that we've been doing in recent years. There may be some rollover money from, to some extent, of unspent in that program for this year. I think there's some amount that's left. While all that's in the budget and kind of put into those line items, at the same time, we are in the initial stages of exploring Second and Third Avenue stormwater and street design work, which is potentially a big project, potentially to be funded in part by the half-cent sales tax and perhaps in part by a loan from the state. All of those things sort of relate to each other. The capital fund for items for street repairs for streets in 2026, the road-based repairs, any rollover money from 2025, and the whatever we do with the Second, Third Avenue stormwater and street design. There was discussion during our budget workshops of trying to look at all those pieces at once at some point. And even though we may have appropriated particular line items, none of those contracts have been let yet. And it's my hope that before we start spending money on those particular projects, that we will kind of have a good picture of where we are in terms of what the projected costs are going to be for the big project, the Second, Third Avenue stormwater and street design, so that we can figure out how best to prioritize all those different sources of funds and do the things that need to be prioritized most. And that's again where the public input will come in. They got some good feedback from the public about where they thought the biggest needs were. And I'll just also want to note for the record that there are a number of what I call rollover items of things that weren't totally spent, although they're in the budget for 2025. Those generally aren't taken up now when we do the overall budget. They're generally taken up March or April after the year-end invoices are processed, so that we have a good idea what those figures are. So what you see now in terms of what's being allocated for line item could be adjusted somewhat by those rollover items. So that's just to be determined in March or April. So there's still work to be done on the budget, but I also want to commend the town staff for all the presentations they did, both the department heads and Finance Director Istone puts this together in an understandable form. And I in particular bug her with a lot of questions about the budget, and they're always answered promptly and confidently, and I appreciate all the assistance we get in that regard.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll echo Trustee Browning's remarks about the quality of the work that all the staff provide us, and particularly making it understandable for somebody who's not in finance. Director Istone, I really appreciate it. So thank you. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yep, I want to echo the same sentiment. And I also want to remind everybody that there was a 19% increase for the sheriff's contract in 2026. And I believe that there'll be another increase of $125,000 the following year. So something to follow closely as we near the $1 million budget in coming years.
Well, and as Trustee Browning pointed out via email, I think earlier, late last week, early this week, you know, the budget tightening trickles down, right, from the federal to the state to the local level. And so I think there's going to be some tough decisions to make in the coming years. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll call for the vote.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Congratulations, everyone. We have a budget. Okay, moving on then to resolution 2025-77, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, appropriating sums of money to the various funds in the amount and for the purpose as set forth below for the town of Lyons, Colorado for the 2026 budget year. Director Istone?
Thank you. The board just adopted the 2026 budget. This is a separate resolution required that just appropriates the funds to each of the individual funds.
Thank you. Questions for Director Istone? Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
Yep. I move to approve resolution 2025-77, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, appropriating sums of money to the various funds in the amount and for the purposes set forth below for the town of Lyons, Colorado for the 2026 budget year.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on this? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Sorry.
Have a public hearing? No,
No,
okay, sorry. Didn't want to-
could you revote so that the clerk can? For the record. The motion passed unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay. Moving on to second reading and public hearing, ordinance 1203, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the rezoning of 4651 and 4652 Utah Highway from Commercial Eastern Corridor, CEC, to PUD, CEC, with a note to continue to the 12/15/2025 meeting.
Yes, please. So you continued first reading to December 1st, so we need to continue the public hearing and second reading to December 15th.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to continue to December 15th?
I move to continue ordinance 1203, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a planned unit development for 4651 and 4652 Utah Highway, December 15th, 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
One quick question, that is a pending quasi judicial matter, right? So it's not something we should
That's
be
correct. Yeah.
Discussing with
A
outside.
reminder.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks for the reminder. Okay, we'll call for the vote. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. All right, second reading and public hearing of ordinance 1201. An ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, amending chapter 2, article 8 of the Lyons Municipal Code regarding boards and commissions.
Thank you. This is an ordinance we've been revising now for several weeks, and tonight in front of you is the second reading. And wanting to host a public hearing on this issue. There have been no changes made between the first and second reading. So it is as presented the first reading.
Questions for staff on this? All right, it's a second reading, so it gets a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this ordinance? Okay, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 1201, updating the Lyons Municipal Code regarding boards and commissions.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? Okay, I'll call for the vote. And the motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, staff, for your work on this. All right, next up is the second reading and public hearing of ordinance 1202, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, amending sections 13-430 and 13-130 of the Lyons Municipal Code, prohibiting the use of gray water in the installation of gray water treatment works. Staff report?
Hello, Mayor and trustees. This was an ordinance that came about. It is the second reading. We had the first reading a couple weeks ago, but an ordinance that came about because the state made some changes to the way they worded their code about gray water, which is wastewater that could potentially be reused for toilets, for other non-drinking water uses. And the state changed their wording to say that any municipalities that don't have legislation in place are allowing gray water to be used and would have to implement a gray water program to be monitored, inspected by the building department, monitored by the utility department. Their new law goes into effect in January, so a number of municipalities are coming forward with legislation that changes the wording of their own code that says, at least for the time being, we are not allowing gray water because we don't have in place the building permit inspection process that would be needed, the utility process that would be needed. It could be developed at some time in the future, but currently we were going to make it so that you could not have a gray water treatment. You may remember at the first reading, there were some modifications to the definitions that were added in there. One of them being to specifically emphasize that wastewater means water that has entered a portion of the sewage system, such as a drain or piping. That would make sure people knew they could still collect water in a bucket or some other format, and that was not gray water, so that would be okay. You just could not go about replumbing your home to use gray water.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Go ahead.
I would just like to ask if we could revisit this in 6 months to see if other municipalities have implemented regulations on gray water. Because it seems like it's a timing issue right now and just new.
Well, we
Be a
did
lot
go
more.
over that Boulder and Fort Collins have looked at it and had studies
Right.
and have actually seen that it wasn't going to pay for financially for them, but we could see. if
It'd be
anyone
interesting in
else-
6 months to see if others have opted. Yeah.
I think the city of Boulder put a 2-year moratorium or something like that. They just paused on gray water facilities, but they didn't say no.
I mean, I think to me,
That
it
seems-
makes sense, but just give them the regulatory lift to get this in place since.
My guess is CML will do it, they'll find out here in
Okay.
after January, who wants
See
to
who
do,
knows.
who wants to do that.
Yeah.
I think I read what Maroga did at Boulder, which had some experience in
Sure.
basically thinking about permitting gray water systems and found it wasn't cost effective. That they ended up in the same place we did, which is for now, not gonna do gray water systems.
And I suppose we might emphasize, since two of the trustees are not on the town's water system, that the code as it's written is specifically for those on the town water utility, which then you are on the wastewater utility if you are on the water utility. But potentially this would not dictate what would happen into a septic system. That would still be dictated by Boulder County, who's in charge of septic.
Thank you. If there's no more questions, I'll open the public hearing on gray water. Okay, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I move the adoption of ordinance 1202 and ordinance Town of Lyons amending sections 13.430 and 13.4130 of the Lyons Municipal Code.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. And the motion passed unanimously. Thank you, everybody. All right, moving right along to the first reading of ordinance 1024. An ordinance of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, amending section 72130 of the Lyons Municipal Code. Regulations for hours for construction activities in section 18430 regarding explosive permits. Is there a staff report?
Yeah, normally we don't do much on first reading, but we're seeking some direction from the board here. So, board requested at the last meeting to bring forth an ordinance to consider amending the hours for construction. The current language for the two sections is on the slide in front of you. We only noticed the hours of construction for the explosive permit because we have an active explosive permit now, so we thought we'd present this here, but we are including an amendment in that section, which we also noticed to have the permit fee go to the fee schedule rather than the $25. So essentially now we're 7 PM to 7 AM, 7 days a week. I have this up for comparison, should this be helpful, or just to give some other ideas for how to approach drafting some language. Some Bertha does do the sundown, which I know is a topic of discussion. Some communities treat legal holidays kind of the same as weekends. A number of communities treat Saturdays and Sundays differently. I know this is a complicated table. And then a number of communities also include kind of an exemption process, which ours currently does not have, and the draft language does have. So I'm happy to come back to here if you need. But the proposed language that we are including in the draft before you essentially clarifies that this would be work occurring on the outside of an enclosed structure. And then again, we've broken it out for weekdays. And then weekends are legal holidays, and staff couldn't really agree on an appropriate time, so we figured if we were struggling to come up with an appropriate time, we really just would to kind of defer to you at this point. We're also including exemption language, that the town administrator may alter these for these reasons. However, should someone, we get a reasonable written complaint, we would immediately revoke that. So really, we're looking for direction from you to plug into these hours on the draft ordinance.
One question, on your chart, does NA mean like not,
They do not mention legal holidays, so I would just then assume.
not that it's not applied?
Right,
Okay.
sorry, that there's
Okay.
no code specific to a legal holiday, so my assumption is if the holiday's on a
Same.
Tuesday, it's a Tuesday regulation.
It's interesting to me that Mead doesn't permit any weekend or holiday.
They have some fairly broad exemption language, so the exemption language, I think, would facilitate that, but the base provisions do not include that.
There's always a lot of construction happening in Mead.
Yeah, so again, to, you know, the Stewart's point earlier, I don't know if that's an enforcement provision or if folks are taking a look at that exemption language.
They just exempt everything?
I think that would be challenging for staff to manage.
Okay, questions first.
Comments on this one?
Well, I find it interesting that Berthoud has chosen to go with 7 PM or sundown, whichever is earlier. And the only reason I am drawing attention to that is because right now, for example, it's, you know, mid-November.
Yeah.
And it gets dark around 5 o'clock probably. And I'm just trying to think of, when do people leave for work and when do people return from work? Because I'd like,
Let's save that for the discussion. If that's okay.
I do think we are in line, the 7 AM, at least on weekdays. That's a pretty uniform time across the board on weekdays.
I have a question, and it may just be a matter of semantics.
Yeah.
But Superior says Saturdays and Sundays shall not start prior to 8
AM.
AM.
And the rest of their code is silent, so that was a little tricky.
The rest of their code is silent.
Silent on hours permitted.
So in the summer, they could work till 10 PM if they wanted.
Or default to, you know, the other noise ordinance, but there was the specific language in here that just said it shall not start prior to 8 AM.
And as far as you know, is this new after the Marshall fire or is it been?
That's been in place a long time. I think there was more of a discussion-based resolution than probably a code enforcement-based resolution if this ever became a problem.
So that means unlimited during the weekdays. They could work 24 hours a day. And then Sundays, Saturdays and Sundays just have to start at 8.
It did not arise to the point where they felt the need to amend it. I'll just say that.
Interesting.
So I think they felt like it was manageable with the tools they have.
Do you remember seeing anyone drawing a distinction between louder or quieter activities? Or
No, and I,
having the same length-based enforcement that we have in ours? It's okay as long as you don't trigger complaints.
well, no, the exemption language, no, not on that. The exemption language is modeled after Louisville's exemption language, and that one would have, you know, you can revoke an exemption if we get a reasonable complaint. I also tried to find communities that regulated maybe blasting or explosive or jackhammering differently, and I could not identify them. It doesn't mean they don't exist, but I was trying to find some differentiation there.
Can you go back to the slide, please, with the language on it? So,
This one, the proposed language,
I'm sorry, now the,
our current language.
yeah. So. So any blasting, the way I read it now, any blasting must occur between 10 AM and 3 PM.
If they are getting an explosive permit, then yes, they're limited to those hours, except if we issue, you know, except upon authorization from the town administrator pursuant to those sections. But generally, 10 AM to 3 PM are the hours for explosives.
I'm curious why 3 PM?
It's so there is time before dark to clean up anything that might be a public hazard.
And the 10 a.m. start time is just because he wants to hear something exploding before 10 a.m.
No, the sound is really a very brief muffled sound, much less impactful than what we've been hearing in recent weeks over in Lions Valley Park. Don't know why they have a 10 a.m. start. I have no idea why that was started. I'm
Maybe
sure
fire
it's been there a
safety.
while.
You'd like
Oh.
things that are a little bit dodgy to happen earlier in the day in case there's a problem. Don't want it bumping up against us the earlier the better.
Makes sense. Thank you. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, I'll entertain a motion so that we can discuss. I have.
I'll do it. I'd like to move first reading ordinance 1204, an ordinance for the town of Lyons, Colorado, amending section 7-2-130 of the Lyons Municipal Code, regulation for hours for construction activities, and section 18-14-30 regarding explosive permits.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, now discussion.
I'd actually be in favor of the need regulations, prohibiting the work on weekends, but with, as you say, a very generous exemption being offered by the town administrator. And we're speaking really to the matter at hand here, because we saw at the last meeting, we had Ms. Liner come in from Lions Valley Park and complain about the constant jackhammering 7 days a week. Given the number of lots that we have left in town that are undeveloped, and given that pretty much all of them are in that same area with the same substrata of ledge, any of those remaining lots that are going to be developed are going to run into the same thing. It's going to be constant jackhammering there. It's going on for 3 weeks now, 7 days a week. We heard from the consultant on noise that said you can't really legislate construction noise, but you can change the hours of operation to ameliorate that. So I'd like to see a prohibition of construction on weekends, but again, with the proviso that the town administrator can make exceptions for it.
So I have a question about this. What about commercial construction? So I'm thinking about 402 Main and,
I am too.
you know,
Exactly, but that can be easily taken care of with an exemption from the town administration. We're talking about rather loud construction noise in the middle of a residential neighborhood, 7 days a week.
Longmont's ordinance, and I didn't put this nuance in there, but their ordinance specifically only applies on properties within 500 feet of a residential property that can hours of construction. So you could maybe differentiate it. Our town is so small. I don't know at what point you hit a buffer that actually would exempt somebody from that. So but there might be a little bit different way to structure that. I also just want to remind, and I don't disagree with you. I just want to remind the board, we typically do not have code enforcement staff here on the weekends. So we'd have to lean on our sheriff's department contract to help enforce that.
I think you would probably hear about it if there was an ordinance.
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
please.
Do most of the ordinances that you've seen apply equally to professional builders and to homeowners pulling their own permits?
I saw no
Which
distinction.
might be harder for people to accommodate on the weekend if people are doing much of their own work.
I take that back. I think Louisville, I want to say it actually regulated it based on if you had a building permit. Which then it was confusing to me if it's work that doesn't need a building permit. So I think there might be a few distinctions on there that we could craft, should that be relevant.
It could be one of the areas for a natural exemption.
Right, if somebody was putting on the deck and they only had the weekend to work on it, it's a do-it-yourself project.
So that would still need a building permit, but if it was a homeowner permit, I
Right.
mean, yeah.
I can see that. I can also see how, the the sound of a jackhammer operated by your neighbor versus a construction guy is gonna be the same. Right? So.
That's. I think you have to experience what these folks are going through for the last 3 weeks to
The-
understand the difference in it.
I'm not saying they're not experiencing something that's disturbing, I'm just saying that, treating a homeowner versus a hired construction crew differently might not work out the way that we think it would.
Well, certainly Mead has figured this out. I mean, Mead is one of the largest growing towns in the area here, so if they're disallowing weekend construction with exemptions.
I'm happy to reach out.
Yeah,
to
we
them.
probably have to reach out to them to learn more about how that's actually working.
Other thoughts? Trustee Rogers?
Well, so now I do have a question, actually, can I ask the question?
Sure.
Because I'm realizing, I'm looking through the language and I don't see a differentiation between residential or
We don't.
commercial. In
No one
any of
does.
these, in any of these districts.
No, I didn't put the nuance of that, and I could add that if that's relevant to helping the board make the decision. Again, I think our community is so small, and I don't know that we could set a buffer that would be meaningful. I'm just thinking about, some of the adjacencies we have here, but happy to bring that back.
I was just trying to address the issue of like 402 Main and Lions Valley Park. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't live in Lions Valley Park, but I can only imagine how those residents must feel thinking, oh my gosh, this one lot has already been 3 weeks, 20, I don't know, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I don't know when this will be do we have any idea when these will be finished? Is it like another week out, another 2 weeks? I don't know if it's a month long.
We're still 6 to go.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, even for one, I'm just trying to estimate how long it would take for one lot and we still have
It
another.
all depends on the
6.
size of the equipment and the skill of the operator.
Right, right.
And that permit is actually a homeowner GC,
That's,
So they've
yeah, the
subbed out
homeowner
that
is our
work.
general contractor.
so
Or
it's
the-
like, yeah, be tricky.
I would be curious to know to what the impacts of limiting construction days and times would be on actually getting the work done and on scheduling crews and on, just the completion of the timeline of completion of projects, because we all know the longer projects go on, the more they cost.
We'll add 2 days every week.
Yeah, another way to think about it is that there's a certain amount of work that has to get done. There's a certain amount of noise that's going to be produced, and you can stretch it out or you can compress it. But it's going to take so many hours of jackhammering, and people will appreciate breaks in it, and will appreciate having weekends off, but they won't so much appreciate having it tacked on to the end. Same number of hours, same amount of noise. One thought about just the math of all of this, without arguing one way or the other on any of it. I did a little calculation on how many hours we're talking about under some of these other municipalities models. And if you just take the averages, if you're not trying to figure out, well, what does it really mean if it's not permitted? Or sunset, sundown or sunset, but you just average some of these numbers. The average for weekdays is a little bit more than 12 hours, a little bit more than ours, just barely, because someone had 13. The the hours on Saturdays are a little under 10, 9.6. The hours on Sundays are a little more than 7.1. So one way to think about it is, we seem pretty close on weekdays. We could trim it some on weekends to match what everybody else is doing. Maybe we trim it all the way to 0, or maybe we trim it well below 12. But if we were somewhere in that 7 to 9 hours a day on weekend days, then we'd be pretty close to the average of what these other 6 jurisdictions are doing. And just intuitively, as somebody who sometimes has to mobilize a crew in the morning, mobilizing a crew a little later on a weekend, it's pretty reasonable, 8 or 9 o'clock. Wrapping up at the time that people like to wrap up, when they have the preference and the ability to do it, at 4 or 5 o'clock. Pretty easy on a weekend when people are willing to put in some hours, but maybe not a 12-hour day. So if we had something like 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, where we're not extending into people's dinner time and we're not waking people up at a ridiculous hour on a Saturday or Sunday morning. Maybe that's a reasonable compromise that puts us in line with other municipalities' average weekend windows.
Thank you for doing the math. Trustee Dottie, and then I want to see if.
I can't help but think of people's nervous systems and different families living in these residential areas, especially. I think of, you know, a mother trying to put a baby to sleep or anybody trying to take a nap. I just remember how clearly this resident was able to share her experience with us, and I had no idea that this was ongoing. And it kind of felt like it was all the time. And I really feel like residents deserve a break. I don't know if it's a full weekend or just a Sunday, but I do feel like they would appreciate knowing like, oh, if we could just get to Sunday, right? This is gonna go on for like a month or two, but if I could just know that Sundays are gonna be quiet, you know, and maybe they don't have to flee their homes that day. Like maybe they can actually stay home and appreciate some quiet. So I feel like, I guess I don't really have an opinion when it comes to the commercial areas in town, but when it comes to residential, I definitely empathize with anybody trying to sleep during that time. Or trying to put a baby to sleep, like that's gonna be impossible. Anybody living across from that, trying to put a baby to sleep for a nap, but that's not gonna happen. Unless you're putting, I don't know, earmuffs on the baby or something like that, some kind of sound barrier. But yeah, I can't imagine that going on for 2 months, every single day without a break, and knowing it's like all day long. So I think we have to offer some sort of reprieve.
Trustee Hammer?
Can I do a little more math first?
Sure, you betcha.
If we take 2 days out, we took Saturday and Sunday out, that's a 29% reduction in the available window. So your 2 months will go to 3.
I get it,
Your 3 months will go to 4.5,
which is why I was suggesting maybe.
maybe one day.
What?
I hear. Sorry.
To me, given the, we're not me. We're not growing. So these are, I'm more inclined to tighten those windows. Yes, it may draw out construction timeframes, but given the limited development we have, seems, and hearing the pain from that resident last week, I was like, ooh. Yeah, so to me, I would tighten them up on weekdays and then Saturdays and Sundays. Tighten them really, you know, quite a bit of, and all that said, and you just said this earlier, Lee, was, you know, there's different noises. You know, so jackhammers versus probably doing it running a nail are a big difference. So I don't know if we could differentiate, you know, those extreme noises that's causing most of the pain, I would suspect. Whether that gets into decibel or if it's really, or, you know, audibility, we really can't come up with a definition. So, but we're tightening the windows, realizing it could increase construction timeframes, but we don't have that much construction.
Trustee Burning?
Yeah, I'm inclined to tighten up the windows a little bit. I thought this Leonard's complaint was on target. I'm kind of inclined, I think as Trustee Williams suggested, to move it to like 8 AM to 5 PM on weekends, which would be still, that's 9 hours. That allows somebody to do an 8-hour shift on weekends, which is kind of standard. I'd even be inclined to move it to 8 AM start time on weekdays, as well. A couple of things in the drafting of the ordinance. The commercial versus residential issue, that's sort of addressed in the town administrator being able to grant an exemption. It references one of the provisions in there says lack of occupants of surrounding property, which kind of goes to commercial. I think I'd rephrase that to say number of residents of nearby properties, because you don't just the surrounding properties, could be property across the street or one over or something like that. And I think that would get to the intent of, we might allow some things in commercial areas that we wouldn't in residential areas. And one other change I would suggest in that exemption process is to authorize the town administrator to condition an exemption on timing restrictions. If somebody comes in and says, I'd like to be exempt, well, where you are, you know, would you be amenable to, if you want this exemption, would you be amenable to keeping it to 9 to 4 on weekends or something like that? Right? Yeah. that would give the town administrator more flexibility to address particular situations, so. When as it's written out, it's kind of like a yes or no, but I think if you give the town administrator some authority to condition the timing of the exemption, it would allow for more flexibility.
Mr. Hammond?
I forgot to add, I would encourage giving wide latitude to the town administrator to make exemptions, because constructions can, I mean, let's say we have a wet summer, they're trying to get things buttoned up for winter, so, I mean, there's a lot of fluidity in this, so. And depending upon the location and the particular noise, so I think you shorten the time windows, but give the town administrator a little more latitude to grant exemptions.
So Attorney Dittman, I have a question. What's the role of HOAs in creating rules like this?
I'm not 100% sure, but I would believe the HOAs, at least I'm thinking of my HOA, may be able to create additional restrictions to go above and beyond what the town does. Just based on my personal experience, I think, with HOAs.
But
And from a legal perspective, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what exactly I'm not an HOA attorney, so I'd have to look into it.
well, and the reason I ask is not to create more work for your HOA, but this seems like a localized issue in Lions Valley Park. And so I wonder about applying townwide rules to what appears to be a localized issue.
What would be east of some?
They're not in the HOA.
Oh, they're not.
None of those,
Then never
none of those
mind.
8 lots
Yeah.
are in the HOA.
Oh, okay.
The other two lots left are on our street, in theory, there are two lots, but, so it could. Right below our street,
I
right?
think we need to remember too, not only 402 Main, but when the hotel starts.
Yeah.
You may hear that at Walt South. I mean,
Yeah,
and that will be some big construction if there's metal beams being brought in.
But you would grant them an exemption.
I'm an exception.
You would. I mean, there's no, from what I've seen of that site, there's not gonna be any
Jackhammer.
explosives or jackhammering there.
So.
Just one other thought, and I might look to you if, whether or not you agree with development experience, but in my experience, contractors generally like to start early to get out of the heat of the day. And so I worry a little bit about an enforcement challenge if we are at 8 and the rest of our neighbors and kind of industry is 7. Not to say we can't do that, certainly with education. But I also just think about the folks working out there too, just allowing them to get started earlier when it's not as hot.
The version of that I'd offer is that I think it is helpful to start early. They are often aiming to end early, though they don't always succeed at that. I would also say people appreciate consistency and clarity. So some really simple rule is a lot easier for a contractor and all their subs to live with over the course of a project. While I appreciate trying to build in some exceptions and some latitude and some flexibility, that might not be as helpful to an actual operation as we would like for it to be.
so there have been a number of suggestions. They all seem like they're going along the same path of tightening it up a little bit. But, and I'm generalizing, but not a ton. So what I'm hearing is that the board generally would like to tighten it up on the weekends. I don't think there's been any objection to that. And then weekdays, I too think about the summer and how hot it gets so early. So I wonder, could you go back to the
Yep.
slide with the chart, please? So I wonder, how folks feel about perhaps 7 AM to 6 PM on the weekdays. Just ending an hour sooner.
I'm okay with that.
I'd be okay with that.
I would be more inclined to support it if we weren't already trimming Saturday and Sunday. if we were going to take some hours, I would prefer to take them from Saturday and Sunday, and I prefer, if possible, to leave weekdays. It's a 12-hour.
So what would you propose for the weekends then?
9 to 5 or 8 to 4.
Both days?
Yes.
I would support, 9 to 5 on the weekends. I think that gives a break. Okay, let's do, weekends seem a little easier for folks, so, so supporting 9 to 5 on weekends sounds like the majority of the board supports that. Okay.
Keep it 7-7.
Keep it 7 to 7 on the weekdays. Administrator Simonson?
Just as someone who recently went through some construction. You want it to get done. It really is. For everybody. I have thought about this a lot. We've talked about it. And I'm gonna use an example at my house. My whole construction team didn't practice their Sabbath on Sunday. It was on Saturday. And so I can only think of 2 businesses are nationally right now that are closed on Sundays because of religion. And I think it's not the same as it used to be that people actually practiced the Sabbath and didn't do anything. So I like my guys would have lost another whole day of work. They were willing to work Sundays, but not Saturdays. So I don't know how you pick which day of the week based. You have several religions that start on Friday night at sundown and go through Saturday. So this is a tough one. And I would be happy to put in that if you are going to have a really impactful process as part of your building permit, which we should know. We should know when they come in if they're gonna be jackhammering or we'll know blasting, but then I can say, you can't, I can be the one to say, you're gonna give them a break from that on the weekends. They can still work, but maybe not that on the weekends. Coming up with something like that, but I did learn an interesting lesson through this, and both as the homeowner and the contractors. Yeah, they just want to get done, they'll work long days to be able to not have to work one on the weekend.
I think there is a compelling case to be made for you having the authority to make the rules more restrictive rather than giving you all of the authority to make them, to grant exceptions.
I like the idea of 7 to 7 seems kind of logical to me looking at this. I mean, everyone except us would be 7, or if we didn't stick with 7. Weekends, I think 9 to 5 is very reasonable, and then no high impact on those days.
Yeah, I can live with that.
No high impact.
No high.
On Saturdays and Sundays,
Without an exception.
That's the crux of it, so that's.
without an exception. That way people get the break from the heavy stuff on the weekends, whichever day is theirs. And we're not trying to say this, your team can't work this day.
I think that's great as long as we can define it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no high impact to weekends would be tough because when you're doing a jackhammering, you can't do much. until
Can't do-
that's done.
Mm-hmm,
You really can.
mm-hmm. It's true.
If you do that,
Mm-hmm.
then that there's at least 5 lots that you're gonna have to pass judgment on.
Well, I'm wondering if they maybe have learned and maybe they'll do small blasts instead over there for the remainder.
Or maybe nobody will buy them now.
I don't know, hasn't stopped anybody on First, Second, or any of those hills in town, so.
Anecdotally, I've heard that jackhammering is at about 300K.
Could be. Well, like I said, it's on the size of, someone else had said, had they used larger equipment, it would have taken half the time. So, there's things there, if when a permit comes in for that, they make me aware that we can work with the code and me and Lisa and say, okay, this is reasonable, this is not. Have you thought about getting a bigger, have you, Have you thought about other options instead of just letting them, like this person being their own GC? Whew, they're learning the hard way. Yeah. So. That's just some feedback.
So it sounds like what the majority of the board is, okay with is 7 to 7 on weekdays and 9 to 5 on weekends.
With some up or down latitude from the administrator.
Yes.
We will do our best to come up with some language for your feedback and second reading on that. And then I also heard trustee Browning make some suggested amendments on the exemption language that
Yeah.
seemed reasonable to me, so.
And then maybe we could even find some examples of what's considered high impact.
Yeah.
So we can use that as a reference.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Do we need to
You need
vote?
to make a motion, yes, or vote with the amendments
Yeah. Okay,
and set the public hearing for December 1st.
so do you need us to further clarify the amendments, Attorney Dittman?
Yeah, that'd be nice. I mean, I've been taking notes on some of it, but if you want to give a rundown, that'd be great.
Yeah, the rundown is 7 AM to 7 PM on weekdays, 9 AM to 5 PM on weekends. The town administrator has latitude to be more restrictive than that. And trustee Browning, what was your suggestion? If you could restate it.
That the town administrator may condition the exemptions on timing of the work.
Mhm.
And also that on the one that says, written consent of no, it's the wrong one. Lack of occupants of the surrounding property would be number of occupants of nearby property.
For efficiency's sake, it may be a good idea we bring back some suggested amendments to the next meeting rather than try to do them all right now.
Okay. Good. Great idea.
So would there ever be a reason to allow an exemption to be more, like we talked about? Would there ever be an exemption? To let someone work longer, like if it's in a commercial zone?
That's what trustee Williams was suggesting.
I think we should give you
Yeah.
latitude to make
Okay.
it more restrictive or
Alright.
less restrictive.
Alright.
Yeah.
This is our baseline.
An example would be somebody coming in and say, if we can go till 7 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday, we can finish the whole job. We won't have to do
And this
anything next
weekend,
week.
we won't have to do it next week.
Yeah.
And then, or if a commercial property or not as impactful as some of the places we are.
Thank you.
Okay.
How do we feel about, we didn't say holidays.
Oh, holidays the same as weekends?
I think holidays should be treated the same as weekends.
Yes.
Others, holidays, weekends? Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So now we have to vote.
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right.
You make a motion to approve all of these?
Yeah.
It was already in motion.
Yep. All right, would you please read consent into the record?
Item 1, resolution 2025-78. A resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, accepting BCD USA designation by the Trustees Society. Item 2, resolution 79. A resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, adopting the 2026 town of Lyons fee schedule. Item 3, resolution 2025-80. A resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, adopting the 2026 classification and pay plan for the employees of the town of Lyons, Colorado. Item 4, resolution 2025-81. A resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a professional services agreement with Safebuild Colorado LLC for the provision of professional building department services. Item 5, November 3rd, 2025, regular Board of Trustees meeting minutes. Item 6, November 12th, 2025, special Board of Trustees meeting minutes. And item 7, November accounts payables.
Thank you very much. You had a long list to read. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anything anyone would like to pull off consent this evening? Okay, I'll call for a vote.
And the motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. All right, boards and commissions, it is my great pleasure to appoint Isabel Chow to the Housing and Human Services Commission. And then let's move on to general business and we'll, take item one since these folks have been so patient sitting here. And then after that, we'll take a short break. I'm good? Okay. So item one is an agenda request from Team Colorado Whitewater Association for storage container placement on town-owned property. Is there, want to come on up? Yep, come on here. And then I think what we'll do is we'll have staff do a brief introduction, then you all can introduce yourselves and tell us what you're asking for.
So, as you know, we've been working with, Team, Colorado Whitewater Association on, the parking lot and on their, slalom poles and some signage. And tonight they want to come in front of you to talk about the possibility of placing a temporary container unit on a town-owned property so that, especially students can put their equipment in that container and not have to haul it back and forth several times a week. They think that professionals will still carry their own boats back and forth, but they want to talk about that. So we have in your packet a sample of the building, the sample of the location that they are asking for. And we'll send it over to you guys.
Right.
Did you see it, Lisa?
Okay, well,
Email.
hello, it's Etsy and Maria, we're the coaches of Team Colorado. And this is Anne, one of the moms of the athletes. And yeah, as I don't know if most of you know, but this summer we've started running some summer camps, some on our own and some running through Town Alliance. And we've gathered some kids, some young kids from the community. And yeah, we're starting to grow our team, but we're running out of spaces to hold all our stuff, all the boats, paddles, and some helmets and life jackets for all these young folks. And most of us, like just us coaches, we just do all the trips up and down the ponds to manage to help them, yeah, move their equipment around because it's a little bit too heavy for them still. But yeah, so we're hoping to get an extra container where we would store all these equipment for the younger athletes. And yeah, this is our proposal for the moment because it was hard to choose the location as we work in the water and the biggest issue is the floodplain area. Yeah. Yeah. And so this is the container, how big is it? You remember? Is it 10 by 20? 10-20? And
Yeah.
here's a picture of it as well, what they're thinking about.
Oh, it didn't switch, hold on.
Isn't that the size of our storage unit, the battery unit that seems down?
10 by 20.
Here you go. This is what they'd like to do. So they worked with Justin Doles, our town engineer, to locate somewhere on that site that would become, even though it could be in a 500-year zone, we prefer to just not. And have it up on a flat spot, but still close enough for the kids to get it to the pond.
Yeah, and we've already mentioned to some people here that we would take fully responsibility to the maintenance of these container and be open for some suggestions of colors to fully integrate into the, I don't know, the landscape.
doesn't stand out like
Yeah, not as white or blue as most of people would think that that's a little bit.
Well, you know, we love our
murals around here.
Yeah.
So, so I have a couple questions. One, would it be on a slab or just on the ground?
I think this area that is highlighted here on the square, I think it's pretty flat. I don't, like, I think it would have to depend on the container, whether we would have to take some like, to put it flat, like the,
Grading.
yeah, the
Do you
grading,
know
but I
if the
think,
container has a bottom or is it open on the bottom?
I do not have this information. Do
I
you?
think it has a bottom. I believe it does, yeah. So there's, I mean, it's supposed to be a very sound structure so that we don't have mice and all that getting into it. So we shouldn't have a problem with yeah, with insects and mice and whatnot getting into it. So and we also, I mean, we have this idea of working with the town of Lyons as well with the Parks and Recreation program. And, you know, you all have several boats that you, I think you have 10 to 15 plastic boats as well. So we're looking to also help store town of Lyons boats. Because a lot of those boats are great for our junior program as well. And then I think we're also talking about in the future moving towards maybe running a rental program. If other people in the community are interested and storing their boats, you know, other people that come to the slalom course or to the ponds and would like to rent out space for their boats as well. So.
Tell me about the orientation of the building. Will the doors be facing the street? I'm thinking about security.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the containers. The ones we've seen, they usually open on one of the smaller sides.
ends.
I think, yeah, this
So it would be open to the ponds.
yeah, or the other way around.
Okay. And is there any, I assume this isn't electrified, there's no electric in here or anything for lighting or anything?
I don't think we'd be able to get power out to that,
No,
so
no.
I think we would kind of rely on just opening the door and maybe a battery censored light, you know, just something for every now and then, but usually we train in daylight, so
Okay,
we're not really thinking it'll be a problem.
thanks.
Is maybe the container
Yeah.
lining tape.
How high will this container be? What's the height of that?
Oh, can you go back?
Yeah.
That one was 9 feet.
108 inches.
That one would be at 9 feet on the website.
We still don't have like a solid provider of the container, but we for sure want the 2010. But I think like most of the containers have the same height, more or less, like we wouldn't need it like too high anyway.
Trustee Hammer?
I assume this container will be anchored to the ground, given the winds we have here. But then end up on.
It's a.
Yeah, that could be taken into consideration, of course, just because like all the equipment is pretty expensive, so we will also be looking into having these boats in place and not just come all of a sudden just like it's not there anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, all these things I think we could like take a look once we have like the container and like depending on the areas. Most of you were talking if it's flat or not, like we would also take the responsibility to make sure that it's like either flat or like the floor stays in good condition, so it doesn't damage it like from the container.
Trustee Will?
I'm wondering if I'm just thinking about the comments we had from the neighbors when we were debating the zoning of this triangle lot. And the way that building is situated on the map now is pretty much in the face of Mr. Menson, who has the house directly behind it. And I assume that you guys might like it closer to the pond if we would allow that.
I mean, yes,
Victoria?
but also we're looking into the map and I mean, we also heard your opinions on the floodplain, but we would be open to working within that area. If that was something
safety wise would, accept us to put it somewhere.
Perfect terrain.
in the middle.
Yeah, I think, you know, it could go anywhere on the site. You guys want it in the orange or no color. I think we were thinking that up against that grove of trees would actually protect Mr. Menson a bit and also protect from the wind a bit. But no, it doesn't matter. Justin just put it where he thought it looked less obtrusive than just sitting in a building on the kind of the middle of the site. But no, it could move. Were you thinking?
Well, I was just thinking, I mean, for their ease of use, it should be closer to the ponds. And for the, satisfaction of the butter, I would think you would know, what be looking at. Because I know as a matter of fact, I believe Mr. Menson was doing some construction on his house there now.
Mhm.
So, that's kind of working in your face if that building's put right there.
It's not he had all of his dumpsters to the south of that. You can see where the earth has been
Yeah.
disturbed. So this, I'm not even sure he would be able to see this from his backyard with the growth.
Well, you might have a wall. I mean, again,
He has a fence as
You were
well,
asking
yeah.
about the height, yeah. Cause he had a fence there earlier when.
But I don't know that.
I'm just saying, if you're not hot over on the, location of it, if it could be moved closer to the ponds for their ease of use and for the comfort of the butters, I think it's better.
Where would that be in your eyes?
I'm just looking at it, I know that the land starts to slope away as you get
Mhm.
into that orange zone there.
Yeah, you can see where it changes.
Yeah.
Can you point, Lisa, where
Yeah.
it changes? I mean, you could move it north
Here?
more if you wanted to. Yeah, follow it around to that northwest edge there. Do you see? the
Like here?
No.
Oh, like
keep
here.
going. No, down in the orange. You can kind of see where the hill,
I'm not super familiar with this property, so.
right here, you can see where this, right here.
Okay.
They can't see that, but where
Yeah.
you see right there, there's
Okay.
kind of, it goes down right
Okay.
off of there.
Maybe it's worth discussion with the neighbor just to see what the most usable location.
Yeah.
I mean, that may be perfectly fine.
Yeah, it might be,
You can't see
it really is up to you. Personally, I don't want a building in the 500-year zone if you don't, so. Personally, I mean, we heard that from the neighbors, they didn't think anything should be in the 500-year zone either. But, we could talk to Mr. Menson if you guys want to, or staff can.
I think it's a courtesy.
Yeah,
And
we've
then-
been planning on speaking with the neighbors and probably not just Dave, but the neighbors that are right around in that area, the Finkhausers and then the greenhouse on the other side of the Mensons as well. And our thoughts in putting it here really just, it's a temporary solution for us and we are interested in something more permanent in the future and talking with you all. And as we're continuing to expand our program, I mean, we have about 30 kayaks in our garage right now, so we definitely are expanding the programs. We have our coaches here from Spain and from Wales, and we're developing more of our junior program and our competitive program. But we're definitely interested in talking more about a permanent solution where the whole town could benefit as well. So not just helping store the Town Alliance boats, but also like we talked about the recreation program. And then, I mean, we would love to offer paddling, classes, and also, host or provide boats for people in the community and provide safety boating and lessons and see if science and leadership program at the elementary school and the high school is interested in coming and doing some programming along, the river and the ponds. And so we kind of have a vision like long term that would go beyond just this little storage container. We'd love to come up with a proposal throughout the winter into the spring for future years. But this is just kind of a temporary storage to help benefit the junior program.
I think trustee Datu had a question.
Oh, yes, well, thank you, and I appreciate the long-term vision, and I appreciate the idea of making kayaking more accessible to the community, because it seems to be such a big part of our community, and yet some of us don't have kayaks. And would maybe love to learn more about kayaking, and so I guess my question earlier was how easy the access is. I know some of your kayakers are really young, and I'm just wondering, I don't know the access to the ponds, I just don't understand, like, I guess I can't visualize how easy it is with the container being at that spot, how easy it is to access.
It is, down is good. For you.
Yeah.
So like right on the other side, you can see that there's some sand. So basically the walk over there wouldn't be too far, exactly. From the container to that other side of the sand that is like super flat. For the kids to just hop on, or people to hop on in the water.
So there is a path to get, so they have to walk around the pond?
Yes, there's the
Oh, I
path.
see.
There's a footpath that goes all.
So
the way
they
up.
follow, okay,
Yeah.
so they would have to take the kayak down to the pond or the path and then walk around.
Yeah, but that's like 1 minute walk.
Okay.
So it's
It feels
like the
doable.
distance is so much closer once you're there to the area.
I feel like I've seen some pretty small kids hauling kayaks in Second Avenue parking lot.
I do want to mention that part of the reason in working with this team is to give this a temporary trial is that if anyone wants to enter a lease with the town of Lyons that is more than a year, it takes an ordinance to do so. And if it is a for-profit business, we're supposed to go out for bid, kind of like we did with Ray's River Rental. So this will have to be less than 12 months trial period with this group in the building and revisit it to see how the board feels and the community feels and you guys feel about what was the temporary trial, but just as a reminder. So if it's more than 12 months, it takes an ordinance.
Thank you for the.
We ended up zoning this property municipal, right?
Yeah.
Or the permitted principal uses is recreational facility. It seems like I've never been sure what that means, but I'm pretty sure it exists.
Trustee Williams, do you have any thoughts?
Would you intend to buy this container or would you lease one?
Yeah. Yep, the team would, provide. They would purchase it?
Yep. And place it. Yes.
Okay, well, this is discussion direction, so what do we think, trustee Williams?
Like to hear what others think first.
Mr. Browning?
I'm in favor of this. I think, there are a lot of potential uses for that particular property talked about, but municipal zoning was done partly because we didn't want other types of things there. And municipal allows this use, it's principal use, doesn't even require a conditional use permit. So I think this is the type of thing that was envisioned when we zoned this thing. Municipal, so I'm in favor of it.
Trustee Lowell?
Yeah, I'm enthusiastically in favor of this, but I do want to hear the comments from Benson and the bank houses as well. So if you could just touch base with them and let us know how they feel.
Okay. Yeah, trustee Browning. I fully agree with trustee Browning and trustee Lowell. I think this is a really fantastic idea. I love the long vision. I would. I love that you're getting ahead of this by consulting with neighbors, adjacent neighbors, to make sure that the location of the container is in the right space, but I believe that the municipal zoning here is perfect for this use.
Yeah, I'm supportive of it, and I think just working it out with the neighbors is the best location, so.
Great.
Thank you all for bringing this forward to us. I do think it could become a community asset, which I think you're envisioning, so thank you.
Thank you.
I agree. I think it is sometimes hard to make an industrial looking container fit a site like this. So I appreciate your willingness to think about colors and wraps and very deliberately think about exactly where the location should be, whether down the slope might be less conspicuous or against the trees would be less conspicuous. So subject to being able to work that as best you possibly can, I'd be in favor of it.
And I'm in favor of it too, and thanks for bringing it. I know you've been thinking about this for a while, so thanks for bringing it to us and, yeah, it's great. Looking forward to seeing people haul their kayaks for 1 minute versus like 20.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, keep working with that.
Awesome.
I have one last. I need to talk to neighbors, just
Sure.
yeah. Or Connor, I just need to know if you were between 14 and 19.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, that's all.
But don't answer that.
It's on my list.
We're gonna take let's take a 10-minute break.
That's what everyone wants to.
Thank you, guys.
I didn't like
very
that.
much.
Hey. Administrator Simonson? All right, we're gonna get started. Discussion direction on the workshop regarding the noise study in Colorado Beach. So, was a great workshop. Lots of good discussion, lots to think about. And Trustee Browning, since I know this is a particular interest of yours, do you want to pick us up?
Yeah, for anybody who missed the workshop, real, to summarize, our authority as a statutory town to do what we were in the process of considering, and what a lot of people provided input on, which was to do a decibel-based local noise ordinance. And we had proposed an initial draft and circulated 65 decibels, and there was a lot of sentiment to that, or input that was too low and would endanger the venues and that type of thing. The way it works now is based on a Colorado Supreme Court decision that Attorney Dittman explained at the workshop, and it's in the packet. We can't do that. If we try to do that, we would subject town to great legal risk of being sued, that our ordinance conflicted with state law, and it would be extremely expensive. Right now, our ordinance is more restrictive as it reads right now than state law. State law provides for up to 55 decibels in residential areas. Not $7. Our municipal ordinance says that amplified outdoor music is deemed unreasonable if it is audible more than 25 feet from the source of the sound. And as the consultant said today, decibel levels and audibility are not the same. You can, in fact, most of their measurements that he did, he said, we measured this, it was below the 55 decibel state standard, but it was still audible. That means that all these measurements he was taking that were in compliance with the state law were illegal or deemed unreasonable under our ordinance. I think that there's been general consensus all along among most of the board members, the 25 foot from the source, out of the 25 feet from the source of the sound ordinances doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous. We were moving toward replacing that with something else, which was a decibel based ordinance. Now that we can't go beyond 55 decibel, it seems to me the thing to do is simply get rid of that provision of the Lyons Municipal Code, which is a subsection, it's section 10, 11, 10B1. And I'll point out that that doesn't mean we're not at all regulating noise up to the level.
Thank you.
If we did that, that section A of that provision starts out by saying it is unlawful to basically make an unreasonable noise in a public place or near a private residence, so forth. That would still be in there. Problem with our ordinance is that it goes on in the next section to define what's unreasonable, which is electronically amplified sound audible 25 feet from the source of the sound. So if you eliminate that one subsection, 25-foot rule, you still have an unreasonable noise provision in the local ordinance. And other places have done this too. They've just said can't have an unreasonable noise. If there should be some court action, what's reasonable and unreasonable, the logical place anybody would look would be to the state law, 55 decibels. I think the chances of becoming a litigated issue are probably pretty small if you give credence to the measurements that they did. Because levels that they did of what's 50 and 55 decibel. 55 decibel, and it was not reaching the residential areas, at least at the time that they measured. So that to me is where we should go. We should eliminate our 25-foot rule. Still have an unreasonable noise general restriction, and we would basically default to the state law. If the legislature fixes this, I would hope by giving municipalities control over their own noise ordinances, because there's lots of differences between municipalities out in the plains and the mountains, in canyons, not in canyons. It makes sense that you should have local control over that, but we don't know what the legislature is going to do. I would like to go ahead and do that now, because even if the legislature acts, like sometime between January and May, there's a delay always on the effective period of a new statute becoming that, and we would still need some time to craft a local ordinance to fit what the legislature allows us to do, if anything. So in all likelihood, that timing would take us past the next outdoor music season, the lines past next summer. So where I come out is, let's get this ridiculous 25-foot rule off the books for now. Basically default to the state standard that we can't make a more restrictive, more lenient anyway, to govern next summer and see what the legislature does. That's where I come out on. And I would say that I call this to the attention of the local music venue owners. It says, look at what's in the packet, understand what this court case said. And I've heard back from 3 of them, and they're all, that's the solution they think is all, they all think is the best to do under the present circumstances.
So your suggestion would be to take out everything from 45 feet at the end of each of those conditions.
I'm just
No,
saying,
just
just delete subsection B1. Just scratch, which is, says electrically amplified.
No, just the electrically
Yeah,
amplified.
just
You-
leave your, renumber the other subsections as 1, 2, and 3, just delete subsection 1.
But every one of those 2 through 4 also cites 25 feet.
Yeah, but they're not governed by our sound standards, you know, they're not the problem. And we could spend a lot of time addressing traffic noise, construction noise, any kind of noise, but what prompted this review all along has been the problem with amplified sounds. I'd really just like to, for now, get rid of that 25-foot rule and basically default to state law.
Anyone else?
Nowadays, yes, as Brandon said during the workshop, that would probably mean that if a citation were issued, and we would hope that it would not, that it would land in district court instead of municipal court, but I don't see that as a big enough concern to keep that thing on the book, for sure.
And I think we've seen, the music venue owners take a lot of proactive steps, particularly this summer. You know, I noticed that, A Lodge, for example, put like a kind of half tent behind their stage, which actually really helped a lot, just anecdotally. So I think that when, you know, if and when problems should arise or complaints should arise, I think that the music venue owners have proven that they are more than willing to work with, residents.
And they have also voluntarily limited their hours.
Yes.
It's not required by our ordinance, but they've done it voluntarily. And that's for the reason, they know late night music will generate complaints, and so.
And it's worked out well,
Yeah.
I think.
And if I can add, you know, just a reminder of when I spoke to the owner of Main Stage back in June, I think it was, or July, must have been June. And he was telling me how he was already regulating the sound at the source at 80 decibels. So when I see the recommendation here from the consultant to say no more than less than 80 decibels at 20 feet from a loudspeaker, I'm like, he's already regulating at the source. So I appreciate you contacting the venue owners and sharing, you know, what your suggestions were. And I agree with Trustee Brown. I think that sounds very reasonable. And I do appreciate how the property owners are already being proactive and, you know, just kind of like what the consultant even said, you know, it's in their best, and even, you know, Eric Keane reminded me, it's in our best interest to stay within what's reasonable. And like the consultant pointed out, if people aren't going to be having a conversation while they're, you know, enjoying a beer and pizza if the music is too loud. So I think this is the way to go.
Others?
No, I agree with Trustee Browning pulling that, the unreasonable code out of there. Going with the state statute, and I do like the discussion we've had tonight, especially with Mr. Sims talking how the venue owners can kind of self-regulate, and I know personally I have a problem. Music normally doesn't bother me, but one time this past summer, it was really, really obnoxious from certain venue, and I sent a note over to the venue owner and they said, yeah, that was bad. We're not gonna do that again. And it was really about the audibility versus the decibels. So, and there's no way to regulate that. So I think if we can deal with reasonable business owners and have that discussion as well as continue to talk to the public and listen to them, and we can get away from having some strict regulations, which I think is probably the best place to be.
Is there a staff recommendation?
I actually agree, trustee Browning, I think that's a reasonable kind of interim solution.
Yeah, solution.
Um,
We would, however, talk about if we're already making changes to this section, why wouldn't we take out the 25 feet and like the loudspeaker one? Because even like at our, people use a loudspeaker to like the raffles and stuff during our concerts and why not fix the other things we know around too?
Right.
The 25 feet from source.
I can hear the principal of the Lions Elementary School up on First Avenue every single time he has a loudspeaker. No doubt about it. That is way more than 25 feet.
I think it should be more like. Not even, I mean, we can be silent on it, I think that's fine, and maybe we get to a point where it's complaint driven or something, but. In the meantime, I think this is a great solution, but. I'm kind of like, no one should be outside fixing their car between 10 PM and 8.
Yeah.
But you can't, or groups talking after 10,
I don't have a problem with the 25 feet in the other sections
yeah.
going as well.
And taking out good old days, we thought we did that once, but it looks like it's still there.
Yeah, that's, this is the bird.
And then unlawful to use a loudspeaker to solicit anything. So I'm like, people do that all the time.
And isn't the
What about-
suggestion to take out all of B though? So wouldn't that take care of some of that?
If we what?
Was the suggestion was to take out all subsection B though, right?
No.
No, just one.
Just B1,
remove
okay.
One and then take the 25 feet out of.
The others and good old
Yeah.
days. So why don't we, if the board is up for it, we can draft an ordinance to bring back and see what you think.
Sounds good.
Great, got what you need? Yep.
Can I just ask a question before you draft an ordinance?
Mhm.
Are we going to address faulty equipment on here? I know it talks about noise generating tools or equipment
Mhm.
during emergency operations or activities that are reasonably necessary for the public health, safety, or welfare. I'd like to somehow include faulty equipment in there. And I don't know if that's,
What do you mean?
well, just the HVAC system, for example, that was causing so many issues.
Well, this is during emergency operation.
I get that, but I'm wondering if we need to remove that.
I
Oh.
would want to allow for an emergency situation. An
Yeah.
exemption for tools, but if that needs to be elsewhere in the code, maybe.
I'm just wondering, where do we address faulty equipment?
Yeah.
Oh, similar to, instead of it saying motor vehicle, maybe it
Any
needs to
motor?
be motor or something like that.
Yeah, that would do it.
Yeah, repair or
Yeah.
investment.
Not necessarily to a car or a truck.
Yeah, just motor noise. That would address it there.
Mechanical.
Mhm.
We aren't,
That's getting off into another area.
yeah, we aren't gonna be able to address that one because this was that a average person can tolerate.
Well, that was an audibility issue.
Well, that's different, yeah.
Like I say, you still have a provision in there as to what's an unreasonable, right?
Okay,
What's
okay.
unreasonable to one person.
Yeah.
That's a
All right, we will try to bring that to you at your next meeting.
Great, thank you. I feel like this was a years-long process in the making. Do you have any final words to offer after all this?
Just the Colorado Supreme Court throws a curve, that's all I can say, but I did just generally, this is an area where it doesn't make sense that the state would try to impose a uniform regulation in all the different places of Colorado that are so different when it comes to sound.
It's
It
astonishing,
makes no sense.
actually.
So,
It's astonishing.
yeah, like I said at the workshop, I would like for us to at least write a letter, if not pass a resolution, urging our state representative and state senator to please give us local control.
As much as it feels as if the discussion's gone on for a long time, and we'd like to put it to bed, this is not being put to bed.
No, it's not.
This is a short-term fix that we're
No,
going to have to
it's a
revisit
nap.
while it's being legislated, once it's legislated.
Yeah. Would the board also then support, staff drafting a letter to our legislature, our legislators?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'll make sure that,
Yeah.
just want to make sure that you heard that.
Got it. We will draft a letter.
I would emphasize
Thank
the
you.
local control instead of some kind of number of permit system, which really doesn't solve the problem for a for-profit business. Just emphasize that we should have local control because standards differ, both in community standards and geographic
Yeah.
characteristics of things.
And this will be signed by the mayor on behalf of the board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. All right, so let's move on to trustee reports. We'll start on that end with trustee Hamrick this evening.
SFC met back on the sixth and all the discussion was about planning for 2026 and just kind of putting a work plan together. So we got through about half that, so hopefully we'll have that up in the December meeting. And there was discussion, I brought up the gray water discussion we had, and so that wasn't favorably received, but I tried to explain it to the best of my ability. It was more of a timing issue, and hence that's why eventually I think it would be good to readdress that if there truly is a need for it. So, given the limited development in this town, I'm not sure, but as you can imagine, the SFC, gray water, the regulations around the country are changing to where you're more permissible, so in this case, we're taking a step back, so. But anyway, so we're working on maintenance work, yeah. Hopefully that's for next year.
Great. Thank you. Trustee Dottie.
Well, as you know, I was thrilled that the Student Advisory Commission finally met today for the first time in, I don't know how many months. It's been quite a while. And I realized that our biggest challenge in finding a meeting time was having a quorum. And so this is why you could see I was very excited to recruit one more member because we need 4 to have a quorum. That's exactly what we have right now. So if one person misses a meeting, then it has to be pushed back, and it's been postponed at least, 2 or 3 times at this point. So if you know of anybody between the ages of 14 and 19 who would like to join the Student Advisory Commission, we still have 3 vacancies. And it would be great to have at least one more. And I'm happy to email them directly. If you know their email address, I will email them myself.
They only have to be 14.
14, between the ages of 14 and 12, I checked already. And we'd love some diversity. Right now, all of the commissioners are 16 years old. They're all juniors at Lyons Middle Senior School. So it'd be great to have some other teenagers of various ages from different backgrounds, just to have a diversity of opinions as we can appreciate here.
Maybe when Clerk Vasquez is back, she can talk her son into volunteering.
I'm putting him on the list. Thank you. Great.
That'll shake up.
You're gonna need a bigger room.
I love that. And since our next meeting will take place on December 4th, I would love to know if there are any issues that the board would like the Student Advisory Commission to address. Like we just covered noise tonight, so
They said they would have been interested.
they would have been interested.
The construction hours, they were interested, 'cause they said, that wakes us up on the weekend.
Well, they all live in Lions Valley Park.
Yeah.
So they knew what we were talking about, but there, because of the Thanksgiving break, we couldn't meet before the December 1st meeting when it will go to second reading. So we'll have to pick a different issue. But unless you want to hear what their issues are.
I'd love to hear what their issues
Okay,
are.
great,
Absolutely.
awesome. And then let me see, Dr. Bob meeting will be tomorrow. So I'm not sure who's planning on attending that meeting tomorrow. I'm happy to attend mostly because I didn't go to the July 30th meeting. So if need be, I'm happy to just go and listen.
I'll probably go.
You'll probably go. Okay, maybe I'll see you there. And then I'm unfortunately unavailable to attend the December 1st meeting in person. If you need me there virtually, I can check out the Wi-Fi system. Enjoy you virtually.
So far, I think everyone else will be here, so it'll be.
So please let me know if I need to join. Great, that's it for me.
Went to my first Parks and Rec Commission meeting and wow, does that guy run a tight ship? Mike Jackson, start at 7. We're finishing at 8:30.
He's got a military background.
Yeah, does he? Probably, yeah. Anyways, so, it was interesting. From my aspect, it's a whole new slate of people on the Parks and Rec Commission from what I was used to when I was on it. Very energetic, lots of good ideas. They had solicited some concerns of the citizens about, the Parks and Rec facilities. What a disappointment that the ice rink wasn't gonna be open this year. And there was a concern about the shrinking of Sandstone Park with the addition of the Joule
Yep.
battery, which, by the way, I went by tonight and it looks wonderful. It really does.
Yeah, it does.
It's lit up nice and. Yeah, there was a variety of other issues brought up, but the one that struck me was the dark skies. That's resurfaced again, and apparently part of being certified as a dark skies community is that we have to designate a certain area of the town to be dark. And the obvious candidate would be Borough Park. So expect to see that in the coming months. It may come before us. And then Mike said, we're done, I'm done.
The dark skies, I'm curious, but you're right, Bone Park is logical. But what about the night ball games
Oh,
and the skate park lights?
Music on the dark ball.
Actually, Julia Hertz has already submitted an agenda request, so when we set the agenda next time, she'll be
I ran into her.
asking, and it's not the whole community, they're calling it it's some
Is
new
it-
initiative where you're doing an area.
Where you should be able to see the Milky Way unaided.
Oh, gosh, wouldn't that be great?
So
I just went down the
There-
story.
they'll be bringing a presentation forward for you.
Does the dog park count?
Yeah, should.
Sure, it's part of Bone Park.
property.
Or the technicals behind.
How does the Park and Recs Committee feel about where we ended up, at least tentatively, on the Dr. Pop properties?
Well, Kara Jost was there.
Yeah.
She's sort of the leader of the Confluence group. Her concern, I guess I forgot about this, the story walk that the library wants to put up. Apparently is going to make up at the Bell of Renewal and go down Crystal Way all the way to the school. There seemed to be some concern about that running through the Confluence neighborhood. Were we talking 12 or 24 signs, I think? We had talked about this earlier, it completely slipped my mind.
Yeah, it's a story walk for kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we approve that?
I believe
Yes.
so.
Okay.
Where do they stand in general?
Yeah, just did the discussion that we had, where we veered away from naming some of the properties and rezoning some of the properties satisfy, or did it further inflame the difference between what active Parks and Rec commissioners had suggested and what Confluence neighbors preferred?
I view that whole thing as sort of a tempest in a teapot, to be honest with you. I think the discussion didn't come up, that's my personal opinion, but the discussion did not come up at that meeting specifically about Dr. Bob beyond that story walk issue.
So they've mostly moved past it, at least until tomorrow's meeting.
Just you ready?
Yeah, a couple of things. This may be on the agenda for December 1st, I guess it is, the tax election issues with Boulder County. Whether we can have a representative of the assessor's office here or not, I would like to have a good board discussion about Boulder County tax assessor's office, lack of, they have not moved as fast as I think they should have on clear errors on classification of property. It's costing us tax money, it's cost the school district and the county tax money And I think that it may be appropriate, and the staff's been discussing this with Boulder County for a long time, with the assessor's office. I think it may be appropriate for the board to at least have a discussion and maybe give some direction on, we would like better collection efforts on property taxes that are due to the town and the other tax jurisdictions. We just did a budget tonight. We know what's coming in the future, and the revenues versus expenses. And we have taxes we should be receiving that we're not receiving because Boulder County tax assessor is sitting on errors for years and not correcting them. That's a problem. I think it deserves public attention.
Victoria, have we been able to reach out to the assessor to see if someone can talk to us?
I don't have that date in particular yet, doesn't mean they won't be able to, but they know you want to talk.
Okay.
I'd like to, they can commit to a date, that's fine. We can't get a commitment out of them. I would still like to have the public discussion, because I think that some of our other taxpayers, particularly our commercial taxpayers that are paying full freight, would be very upset to know that some of the nearby properties have been getting away with basically seriously underpaying their taxes as residential properties when it's truly a commercial property for years.
Trustee Hammer?
As well as to understand the reevaluation when a property goes from all in the ground to development, how quickly that could hit the tax rolls
And
and
this
what that
right,
process is.
this relates to the whole URA thing too, but if we properly revalue these properties that have been erroneously classified, is that gonna erase that URA negative?
Yeah.
Or not? I don't know the answer to that, 'cause it's so complicated, but
Okay, so we'll
Okay.
we'll get on that.
that's one future agenda issue. And I should say, UEB is not meeting tomorrow because, I think Chairman Kerr and maybe Director Kaplan are going to the mean conference, or whatever it is. for the meeting, and I was unable to attend the last UEB meeting, but if they did something significant, I'll report back next time.
EVC? Oh,
UEB.
The EBC is meeting tomorrow morning. Let's see, the second agenda item that I would like to, request the board to consider putting on a future agenda, not making a decision tonight, relates to the housing coordinator position that was part of the administrator's report. The board in July of 2024 approved, a $10,000 expenditure for our match on a grant. Actually for our match on a grant that would fund a housing coordinator jointly between Netherland and Lyons. That money wasn't spent in 2024, it was carried over to 2025. It doesn't look like it's gonna get spent in 2025, it looks like it's gonna carry over to 2026. And the item in the administrator's report is to request a $10,000 grant from the Boulder County Affordable Housing Tax to basically pay our match, so we wouldn't spend that $10,000. That's a request right now. That request may or may not be approved, and even if it's approved by Boulder County, we would still have to decide whether to accept that grant. So that it's not something, a decision has to be made right now, but in the meantime, I think we should take another look at the housing coordinator position for a couple reasons. And again, I'll just highlight these quickly in my eyes. And all I'm asking for is that a majority of the board put this on a future agenda. It's not an immediate concern. For future reconsideration. Situations have changed in both Netherland and Lyons since we approved that. Netherland, as everybody knows, is buying a ski resort and to change their housing needs to a considerable degree. At the time that Lyons got in, approved this, we were still trying to figure out what we were gonna do for Prop 123. That was gonna be a big part of the housing coordinator's role. How are we gonna meet our Prop 123 goal? Now, that's kind of narrowed down to Seward. The Seward property counts toward Prop 123, that will meet our Prop 123 goal, which I believe the deadline is November of 2026. So our situation on the ground has changed as well. Another thing the housing coordinator was gonna do was work on our participation in the regional housing partnership with Gilpin County, Netherland, and Lyons. That's still going forward. We agreed to let that proceed, although it's not costing us anything. But I think the general board position on that was it may not make sense when we have Boulder County Housing to do our local housing. So that situation of the regional housing partnership has changed. And then also, for a while, Netherland put this on hold on their end. And the last discussion was in July of this year when we were gonna, it was stated we were gonna get an update on exactly what Netherland was doing and what their vision of this was, which we haven't received yet. So for all those reasons, I would like for us to put this on a future agenda and discuss what the future holds as in terms of the housing coordination.
And we talked, trustee Ryan and I discussed this, and I asked staff to give us an update on what a housing coordinator would actually do.
We prepared it today, but if you want this as a formal agenda item, we'll wait and put it as part.
Well, we can do both, but I'd like to know. I mean, if you have it, if you have the list prepared, I'd like to.
I mean,
I'd like
2 pages of things. Do you wanna?
I can just do a quick summary if that's.
Yeah,
It's
if you
not
could
on
do a
the
quick
agenda.
summary,
Oh.
because I think, the question before us now is, does the majority of the board wanna take this up as an issue again?
Okay,
And this might inform
okay.
that
Sure,
decision.
so I kind of broke it up into kind of 3 categories. One would be, first would be kind of project management, so again, support for the local housing developments, including Carter Court and Seward. As well as we have the work happening with the homeless, all the communities in Boulder County through the Commissioner Loachman's efforts have agreed to put on, and we should do this as well, I think this is important, promote and advertise our ADU code that was recently updated, so to include kind of an open house, rethink our ADU incentive policy, promote ADUs, as well as we know we have an inventory challenge as well as an addressing challenge. Those are all housing related issues that would, I think, take up some time. We threw out possible staff liaison to the Housing and Human Services Committee, so that could be a possibility. In terms of regional partnerships, in addition to the multi-jurisdictional housing authority, that exploration, we also are a strong member of the Regional Housing Partnership, which is all the communities in Boulder County. That's at least a once a month meeting, as well as we've got subcommittees for different types of efforts related to communications, Prop 123.
Yeah, and I just wanna note, in the meantime, until we have that, Planner Ritchie does these things.
This is all on my plate.
Free her up to start getting into code and with new developments starting.
Yeah, thank you.
Is how we look at it, but yeah.
There are also a number of just regional housing related meetings. We have an affordable housing dashboard as a regional housing partnership that we maintain. So Lion's work in that is not high, but it's still work. And again, then finally, we have some policy work related to Prop 123 compliance, the fast track compliance and reporting. Just monitoring Boulder County AHT and informing any future grants. Even though it's not due yet, we do have the housing action plan from the state legislation for which we adopted the housing needs assessment from Dr. Cog earlier. There's a monthly DOLA implementation call, just tracking, different implementation strategies, which usually relates to a little bit of work. Future influence, hopefully, on the Dr. Cog housing needs assessment that will impact Lions. So if there's any amendments to that, it would be good to have staff availability and time to kind of influence more some of those future conversations. So in my opinion, reading the grant, I think, housing related activities is more than just Seward. And support would be great.
We still have to stay in touch with what's happening at the regional and state level, even if we don't necessarily see that as our priority. As you know, they implement things all the time that are new regulations and we're just supposed to know it.
I would also add, we have executed, or DOLA has executed the grant agreement to hire this position. And so we have not inquired yet about what would happen if we withdraw, what would that happen? What would that mean for Netherland? If then they would assume our half, if they do have more housing needs for Eldora. So that's a conversation that we would need to have with DOLA and with Netherland.
I do know that last week our DOLA regional manager was here to talk about to talk about the historic culvert stormwater and eligibility for the big DOLA grant. And he said, what is going on with this and why haven't, maybe you guys should just take the lead instead of Ned if they're overwhelmed with, you know, other things happening. And I tried to explain some of the hesitancy and he said, just, he roundabout way, but said, just know that when you turn back money to us, too late for us to reallocate it. It is kind of a mark, for your next grant out. And it's like, oh, okay. So it was like, all right, we understand, but we also have just been very, you know, we've been just trying to be patient with Ned. They bought a mountain and then they had a fire, so. We're very frustrated. We've told Dola that. Yeah. That we can't even get the job description across the board with them, so. And there's also, we'll put all this stuff in, you decide you wanna have a meeting on it or discussion on it, we can put this into an agenda or memo or something. Along with the job description to date. Really for Lisa and I, the biggest thing is this would be a 20-hour position max. I kind of think we'll need it less than that. But if this person was keeping their pulse on all the things regional and state, sure. Yeah, sure. There's a lot of moving parts with this housing.
So, and my view on this is the board has voted about this before, and it was not a unanimous vote. To be clear, but it was a majority vote of the board to move forward with this shared position with Netherland, and I do not want to take it up again. I think that it's still a good idea, and I don't think there has been any material changes that would lead me to believe otherwise. So you've heard Trustee Browning's position, my position.
Yeah.
And it's just, so folks, just to remind folks, I think it was at the start of this term, we decided to kind of amend our board rules so that if a trustee brought an issue forward that the mayor did not want to put on an agenda, the board would decide whether it goes on an agenda. So that's this process now.
Can you just refresh my memory? I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. It's 20 hours a week at a cost of $20,000 for 2 years.
Yes.
To us. And we have already budgeted the 10,000
Yes.
that has been rolled over and rolled
Yeah,
over.
and Boulder County is actually, you know, they supported and said, you know, we'd encourage you to apply for this funding for both of you.
Yeah. So
Because
Boulder-
they want us to have one.
So Boulder County would cover this $20,000.
We will hopefully, yeah.
Well,
They will cover $10,000.
10,000.
No,
We
we
would
would apply
request.
for 2 years worth now. Is what
Okay.
they're asking for, 2 years and that's 2 years. And then Boulder County has one person with these 2 small communities they know is keeping, is up to speed.
Well, this seems like a no-brainer to me, and especially if this is something we've already voted on, we've already attributed funds to this, and like, I don't need to revisit this, I feel really good about the list of things I know that our resources are very precious, I know we have very few staff hours available to us to manage all of these things. That we have said are one of, you know, housing is one of our priorities, it's on that list. So I feel like this is still relevant.
Trustee Hammer?
I agree. I'm not willing to go revisit it. I voted in favor before because I looked at it as we get a half a FTE for a few bucks and
Yeah.
given our limited resources, it's a no-brainer like
Yeah.
trustee Benz.
Yeah.
Trustee Lowell?
I'd like to revisit it again. I have some skepticism about a 2-year position. Doing anything meaningful for our housing situation, seems to me, well, we know as a matter of fact, they haven't been able to hire anybody, that's why there was a reallocation there of some funding. We haven't hired anybody in a year and a half. so-
It hasn't been advertised.
It's not because we haven't tried.
I know, but we had to make an adjustment to the salaries,
Yeah,
right?
because they
It was gonna
felt
be
it was
3
too
years,
low.
Now it's 2 years, because we
Got it.
needed the money to sweeten the pot.
Got it.
I also think that with with Netherland, I think they're going to be, if this person comes on board, I think probably it's more like 75% of their time is gonna be spent in Netherland, which is a much more, as they say, target-rich environment. They've got a lot more possibilities up there for housing than certainly than we do here. So I'd like to take another look at it.
Trustee Lawrence?
I have two concerns about the position. One is, it's not clear to me that we'll get the a reasonable share of this person's attention, given the differences between us and Netherlands, the likelihood that this person will come from Ned, the needs that Ned has compared to the needs that we have. And then my second concern is that when I hear your list of things that we need to do, I wonder if we really need to do all those things. Some of them I think are necessary, required, and productive, and some of them might be discretionary. That said, I'm not inclined to review a decision that was made before I got here. I don't think things have changed in any way that I've heard, with the possible exception of our having some doubts about having a regional housing authority, which might have been part of this person's purview. And still might be, but seems like a long shot now. Given the balance among all those things, I would not support putting it back on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you. All right. We have a summary of action items, please.
Can I ask one question
Yeah.
in lieu of a trustee report?
Mhm.
ECDC didn't meet this month, so I don't have anything to bring there, but I do have something that's been percolating in my mind since our budget discussion earlier tonight. I am not revisiting my vote in favor of that budget. I absolutely think that made sense and I continue to support it. There is something that I want to make sure that I understand because it might affect future decisions at some point. Please correct me if anyone here thinks that I've gotten this maybe just a little bit wrong. If not, I can certainly go to Director Esten and ask. It sounds like we have authorized expenditures of about $9 million for the coming year, of which about 1 million is for capital items. Of that 1 million, about 500,000, it seems, comes from the reserves of our various funds. Does that seem right? She gave us the amount of prior balances that were going toward next year's expenditures. They all add up to about 540, about 500,000 of that $1 million. And if that seems more or less right, let me just ask people who've been here for much longer than I have. Is it pretty typical that with some rollovers and with a tight budget and with the reserves that we hold, that we might pull in any given year as much as half of our capital spend from current balances?
I think you gotta look at where it comes from. The utilities funds have big fluctuations depending on particular projects. And things like the wastewater treatment plant will make a big difference. So, I mean, aggregate the whole town budget of 9 million. You really have to almost look at it fund by fund.
Okay.
See where it comes from.
Some use that mechanism more than others.
Yeah.
And by virtue of their size, they will naturally use it more than others.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not unusual.
Okay.
In my recollection.
As long as we meet that 3-month reserve, it's not unusual. Or if we're saving up for a big project, you'll see that. Ideally, you know, if you were to ask the finance director, well, anyone here, we'd love to be able to just put all excess in reserves every year. But that is the only mechanism we have figured out, is to save and roll over when we're ready to do a project. We have never had the luxury of having more, but we only do it if at least that 3-month reserves is in place.
After we pulled it or before we pull it? At year end?
After, no. If there always has to be 3 months in the reserves, even if we transfer it.
That's a good question.
That's a great question. And if you'd like to talk to Cassie and I more in detail, look at it, we sure can. She could tell you what, you know, year by year kind of, so you can see that trend. Exactly why we want a long-term forecast, so we can start charging fees to be more prepared for that than rolling it over every.
She's offered to just give me a brief on how some of these things work.
Sure.
I will take her up on it.
Okay.
These things.
Thank you, trustee Williams. I was about to skip over you for trustee reports, which means that I would skip over myself. So, and nobody wants that to happen. So I don't know how many of us were able to attend the Priscilla Cohan Artistic Pursuits Fund fundraiser, but it was wonderful. And I don't know how much money they raised, but I hope it was a lot. And it just made me miss our Priscilla that much more, seeing her artwork and talking to folks. And so she would have loved it. HHSC Met got a good update from Kay. And there's no Dr. Cog this month. Usually they canceled the November meeting, so that's a welcome respite because that would have been Wednesday, and then we have Laura Thursday. So the CML Policy Committee. I went to join up and was told that executive board members shouldn't sign up for the policy committee. So they very kindly told me, no, you can't. But we would love to have somebody from Lions on our policy committee. We would really love to. It is a monthly meeting. There is a kind of like policy committee 101 webinar happening, I think, in the next 10 days or so. And it's a large group of people. The group is run really well, but it is a really great opportunity to provide input. So I'm not gonna volunteer anybody to do that because I can't. But if I could, I would volunteer trustee Browning to do that, or at least to consider it.
I'll give it, is virtual attendance allowed in any of the
It's all virtual.
Okay, all right,
That's all virtual.
I'll do it.
Hooray, thank you very, very much. I will send out the emails on that. Okay.
As long as they let me talk about local noise ordinance.
Brandon, do you attend those meetings? Do you attend the policy committee meetings?
I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of people on the policy.
We have our own separate city attorney call that we have 2 times a month, but I don't attend the policy meeting.
Where you talk about the policy committee?
We're talking about what's happening and what happened to the policy committee, maybe, yeah.
Liam, sorry, you had a question?
What was the date that Senator Marchman was coming?
Did you really know?
It's the 8th, because it's on my calendar too.
Yeah, and hopefully the staff will do some e-blasting about that.
December 8th at 5 o'clock.
Thank you. I might want to go to that too. I don't know if that means we need to notice soon.
Probably should notice.
Okay,
That.
we can.
Yeah, and Representative Smith was invited as well, and she really wanted to come, but she wasn't able to because of the scheduling conflict.
But I heard she's coming to the parade.
She's coming to the parade. Okay. Summary of action items, please.
I have a variable message for notification for parade of lights. Signage for fishing regulations at the October hall. Street sweeping communication before Thanksgiving break. Continue ordinance 1203 to December 15. Ordinance 1201 passed on second reading. Ordinance 1202 passed on second reading. Ordinance 1104 passed to second reading. Draft noise ordinance for the December 1st meeting. Draft letter to legislation advocating for control over noise regulations. Schedule a discussion on improving collection efforts from the Boulder County Assessor's Office. Review the housing coordinator position, roles and responsibilities. Am I missing something?
I think the only thing I had is, hopefully I'll follow up in 6 months regarding gray water around the state and what other communities are doing. I am gonna reach out to Mead just to ask how they apply their weekend rules and exemptions, see if they have something already that might be useful to us. The only other one was, I'll make sure that the Whitewater group talks with the neighbors and gets back with us, and we'll get back to you guys with how that went. And I think
that was on.
And I was gonna check any update on the legislative efforts for the sound state legislation.
Right, thank you. Okay, is there a motion to go into executive session? Anybody?
Open Paula's door. It's in Paula's door.
Oh, she's got it in her drawer. Door, look where, in her drawer.
Here. Here, I've got it, it's starting
To remember that.
starting there and then it goes on the other side.
I move that we go into executive session pursuant to CRS sections 24-6-4024E and 24-6-402E for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing in negotiations and for legal advice from attorneys representing the town regarding a property dispute concerning 0 Stickley Street, Lions, Colorado.
Thank you, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, vote on that motion.
Motion passed unanimously.
You can't vote. Thank you, all right.
You can
And Maria, you gonna send me the link for that?
I just sent you an invitation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'll see you on the other side.